Go.
Hi, and welcome to the Technocrat Live. I'm your host, Matt Newhall, and my guest tonight is Bill Catlan.
Hi, everyone.
Developer and doer of many things extraordinaire.
Sure.
Yeah. You have lots of, the list is too long, man. I can't read it all. So thanks so much for coming to my show. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me. I've watched your show. I've enjoyed it, and I'm glad to be here.
So I just wanted to say that, thanks so much. I have a list that I give my guests ahead of time. Most people don't read it or flee in terror. Bill read the entire thing and answered the questions like a test. So I'm giving him an 86.3%. He did very good.
All right.
On the Technocrat test, which wasn't even a test at all. I can't believe you read this entire thing and answered everything.
You know what? If I had more time, I would have written less.
Nice.
Does that get me up to 90?
Yeah. 90% extra credit,
right,
baby.
Excellent.
Yes, now you're an A. So, see how easy. I am an easy teacher. All you got to do is show up and hit the subscribe button. All right. So, first I wanted to say we do the news, and then we go to Bill and we talk to Bill about his ideas, so he may chime in. We have now officially designated the news the Dystopia Report. We're trapped in this nightmare together. So
I love the name. I love the name.
So from now on it will be the Dystopia Report. So I may change the tagline every week. We'll see.
Right.
Sometimes it's actually kind of hopeful. Not all the tech news is bad, but sometimes when it's bad, it's really bad.
It can be. Yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty depressing. So although it also can be funny. So, by the way, if you need anything, just let me know. Water, wine. Would you like some wine, or is it too soon to start?
A little too soon.
A little too soon.
But
okay.
It's not going to take long, I don't think.
We're going to gear up to the wine. All right. So, first thing in the Dystopia Report. This is kind of interesting. So we were talking about this in the last panel. Apparently, French police have hijacked and wiped 850,000 machines in a botnet. So, I mean, we were talking about the ethics of whether it's right to do this, and also, do we want to do this? I mean, this is 850,000, this is a million machine botnet to ground and make it easy to think about. And the French police hijacked the whole thing and then proceeded to patch the vulnerabilities that made it a botnet.
Oh, okay. So they fixed it.
They fixed the botnet. That was their solution. So, kudos to them.
Whose botnet was it?
Well, supposedly it was the name of it was based on a worm called Retadup. Or RETADUP.
Oh, I see. So this was on various individuals and companies' machines without them knowing it.
Yep, and they had hacked their machines and were running something in the background, and the French police basically hacked the machines again
and remediated it.
Oh. Yeah, so I don't know. Maybe there was collateral damage. There had to be, But at the same time,
they neutralized it.
Ethically, primo. Legally, I don't know. I mean, they did it, so maybe they're like, "What are you gonna do?" And take us. Anyway, it was a Monero miner botnet. So most of the hack attacks lately, whether they're worms or whether they're viruses, tend to want to start up botnets. I actually had one try to start up the other day on my machine. It wasn't hacked, but they tried to use Java. It was a site that was an untrustworthy site.
Right.
And it just all of a sudden my CPU, my fans are blowing, and I'm like, what's going on? And I'm like, oh, it's Java. Kill.
Yeah.
Bye.
Yeah. Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I don't know about the police. It's the French police, right? Going on to
it was the French police. I don't know. I don't know how they're organized, but yeah, it was the French police.
Without asking, basically, right?
Of course, yeah.
We're going to fix this.
Excuse me, may we do something very untoward to your business model? Oh, that's British. Sorry.
No, but the machines were innocent actors, right? They weren't part of the scheme. They weren't part of.
Yeah. They're just people who didn't know any. Either. I don't want to be disparaging. I mean, we are technocrats, but I don't want to be too disparaging against the people because you never know. Sometimes crap happens. Everybody gets hacked sooner or later.
Right.
So it could have been innocent. But yes, lots and lots of people out there who just didn't pay attention to securing their computers, and their computers were owned, and probably their electric bills went up too. You hear about that, don't you?
Right. No, it's true.
Anyway, I just thought that was kind of interesting. I hate to get into this political stuff, but this actually could be a killer for someone if they're not paying attention. They didn't notice this. Apparently, Trump sent out a warning to business owners. Yeah, you can't put all your eggs in the China basket. In other words, he's expecting more tariffs. Apparently, negotiations aren't going well. So. Expect more tariffs. So if you're doing all of your manufacturing in China and you have any other choice, maybe it's time to diversify. Just saying, So probably some of that has to do with Taiwan. So I don't know if you've been paying attention to what's going on in Taiwan, but basically China's trying to strong-arm Taiwan into following more Chinese rules, and they're not happy about it.
Right. Extradition, stuff like that.
Yeah, like apparently one of the days a couple weeks ago, a quarter of the country was on the street protesting, which is insane. That's like unreachable numbers in any other country.
Well, listen, they apparently have I would say a fear of having to face mainland China justice, right?
Right.
For what mainland China might think they have done or accuse them of doing.
Right.
So I think they take it very seriously.
Thought crimes?
They take it very seriously, sure.
Yeah.
Sure.
That's my least favorite kind of crime.
That tells you a little bit about what's going on there, right?
Yeah.
If you don't believe anything you hear or read yourself, look at how the people are reacting, right? They live it.
Also, an interesting thing. Apparently, one of the things that for years the police have been using in any country, not just China, have been using non-lethal crowd control methods like tear gas, sound machines, like water cannons, rubber bullets, you name it. So they figured out one back that they could use back. Laser pointers. So this has become a big thing in Taiwan. Apparently the protesters have been bringing laser pointers and shining them in the general direction of the police, so forcing the police to close their eyes, forcing them to retreat.
And it's been effective?
It's been effective. So, China clearly has military dominance. They have to make everything look like it's the police. They can't be military, right? Because then it's a PR disaster.
Right, sure.
Because Taiwan's still free enough that they're not behind the Great Firewall of China yet, so stuff can get out.
Yeah, well, I think if we know anything from history and even recent history, the state will maintain order, and it will presume its own legitimacy. So
presume.
Listen, I think there's a place for vocalizing your protest. I think there's certainly a place for organizing and coming together to express a shared view. But I think it has to also be done in a peaceful way.
Right.
So, and I'm not saying it hasn't been, but if the protesters are now retaliating, you may not see it this way, but I think it, and let me know if you don't see it this way. It's just kind of a thought I'm having on the spot, to be honest with you. It's kind of an escalation, right?
Oh, yeah.
It's like we're saying we're not, not only are we exercising our right to protest, but we're going to overtly affront your authority.
Right.
With proactive means, these what are you saying?
Laser pointers.
Laser pointers.
Which can really blind you, by the way. It is pretty serious.
It's not going to blind you, but it's more an affront.
Right.
And it's an attempt to neutralize what the state's trying to do, which is neutralize you with nonviolent methods, although by force.
Although they have the guns on the hips if they need to go there, so that's the difference, is right. They don't have they can only escalate so far, right? They escalated from umbrellas or strong words to laser pointers, but the police can keep escalating, right? They're like, okay, we're losing, we have to win.
Kind of. And it's funny, but you know what? They're doing the right thing. They're expressing their protest, and I think they're keeping it nonviolent. But it is an affront to the authority of the state.
I haven't seen a lot of there are skirmishes. There are, for every video I see of protesters literally fighting with police, there's also another dozen or so of protesters just yelling at police and telling them to back off and you can't do this to us. So personally I'm done with protests. I think protest is captured. I'm really nervous about it because of the surveillance state. The anonymity that
protest is captured?
Yeah.
What do you mean?
It's totally captured. So because of the surveillance state, people can peruse recorded video and find you. facial recognition is close enough. It's better than 50-50 shot. If you've done something to tick off the local authorities enough, they will find you.
Oh, so, you think you'll become a target?
You'll become a target, yeah. So that's it's unfortunate. So we have a few things. You have speech, you have protest, you have boycott. I think boycotts on
conscientious objector.
Conscientious objector, right? There's a few different ways you can do, but unfortunately, I think that it's just until something changes, protest is done for the moment. Technology can flip around. I can see it flipping around, but it hasn't so far.
It was only ever a PR tool anyway, right?
Yeah,
it was never really effective.
Well, if you get enough,
that's my,
if you get a quarter of the country to march, nobody can not report it. They have to report it. Even if they lie about what's happening, they have to report it.
Right.
A quarter of the country was on the street today. They can't help it. They have to. Because you can't go anywhere. You can't go to work. You can't get food.
You're going to make me get political, right? It's almost like you can't, obscure people showing up at your inauguration because it's photographic evidence.
Well, no. But this is true. This is the problem with tech. So this is the problem with science. Tech has science problems, and science has ethics problems, and ethics has political problems. So you can't really talk tech or science without eventually talking politics. You have to. You can avoid it, but even if we avoided it completely and didn't talk any politics, we would create like a civics kind of framework between the ethics and politics, where someone else could just take the last step. And walk off the platform and boom, now I'm in politics.
Right.
So we can avoid talking about the best way to avoid politics itself is personalities, right? Don't talk about a person. I just mentioned Trump because I'm looking at it from a commander-in-chief perspective. I could have said the commander-in-chief. Right. And I really do my best on the show to avoid that because it's not productive.
Right.
If you can spell out what everything should be in civics. Does that make sense, or am I being fair?
I think so. I mean, I definitely am on board with try to keep the personality out of it, and it's always been that way.
Why? It's been going great when we allow the personality into it.
Well, the problem is discussing issues is more productive, but you need a lot more information at your fingertips in order to have an in-depth discussion of an issue, right?
Right.
I think one of the major problems over the last 20 or 30 years now, I mean, it's kind of, it shakes me a little to say that because that only takes us back to the 1980s, right? But it's the whole soundbite. In our lifetime, yeah. Yeah, it's the whole soundbite politics, right? And this is an attempt to simplify the message so it can be promoted, right? But it oversimplifies everything, and I think it's a large part responsible for what's been created, right? These polarized camps with very simplistic positions. So
here's the optimistic. I'm sorry. I know this is the dystopia report. I don't want to ruin it. But here's an optimistic point of view, which is that it's always been this screwed up, and the only difference now is that we notice because we have the internet. So I think that is definitely at least a component of it.
I see where you're going. I see an element of truth to that.
Also, a lot of it is the fairness doctrine, which was canceled out in '87. I think a lot of that was. So that was the thing where you had to provide both points of view, and Rush Limbaugh went on this campaign against it, and he got rid of it, along with some other Republicans. And it was actually, the funny part is the Republicans are the ones suffering under that decision now, I think, and they're dumb for having done this.
Well, how are they suffering?
So, when you have to. Limbaugh wanted to do it because he wanted to give his one point of view and not have to give a counterpoint. And in order to have public, just for airtime, right? It doesn't matter what we do on here. It doesn't matter what people did on cable. It doesn't matter when you were doing over the radio, and he was mainly a radio personality, or over the TV. And what it did is it created a platform where you were forced to at least go through the mechanizations in public as a journalist of pretending to look for what the other side has to say, whether it's right or wrong. And then I think the side effect of that is it taught people to try to look at the other side. They don't do that anymore. Now it's just the one side. Right. And if there's a clear cut other side, they'll cover it. But if there isn't, they won't try to invent it. And unfortunately, that ability to learn a lesson of rhetoric from the most ubiquitous source of information in the country is gone. The airwaves.
And that talks to a little bit of well, two things, right? You don't get both points of view. I had a thought, now I lost it. Well, yeah, I don't think.
Yeah, that's fine. Well, I mean, do you think is what I'm saying? I'm not saying what I'm saying is complete, but I really worry about the fairness doctrine. I want it back. One of the things I hate Reagan for is for being part of that decision to get rid of it.
Yeah,
because it was a policy. It wasn't a law.
Well, it's also a market failure of sorts. That's where I was going to go with it.
Oh, okay.
Right? Because the market has kind of responded well to not having to hear both sides. Right.
Right.
Everybody wants to be in their camp, and they want to kind of hear their own views.
You can put the stuff that sells on longer, so you make more.
What do you mean, as far as commercials?
Yeah. Well, like you just. Okay, what sells? What are people saying right now? Well, I didn't like that guy. He was a pervert. That's what sells. So that's what they put up, even whether it's true or not.
Right. Well, to a certain target, right? So you can instead of having to divide your time between things that your target wants to hear and things your target doesn't want to hear, you could just. And I think this is why why the market is rewarding this, right? Because if the market wasn't rewarding the absence of both sides, then you would see more of it, I would expect. What do you think about that?
Yeah, well, I think it did reward it for a while, and now it's backfiring. So I think that's one of the reasons that the ratings are so far down. Is what the heck is that? There's an economic curve where demand and supply reverse. Oh God, it's on the tip of my tongue.
I don't know.
It's a very weird thing. It only happens once in a while, but it has to do with where a G something good. Oh, I don't remember what it is. Anyway, I'll look it up and put it in my notes.
Okay.
But I feel like that's what's happening in the news right now. Like everyone expected exactly what you said. The market demands kind of the idiocracy version of the news, and it was slowly getting more.
I didn't say that.
The idiocracy version of the news, I said it. This is the dystopian report, so I love that.
No, the reason I jump on that is because
I'm just going to say dystopia report for an hour straight now, from now on. It sounds great.
It does. It's awesome. It really is. It really is.
Thank you.
The reason I don't want to be a part of calling something in the idiocracy report or anything like that is because listen, everyone's ignorant in something, right? And if you say it in the right way and everybody understands where you're coming from, like yeah, there's things I don't know about, there's things you don't know about, but I think it creates sort of a well, we know and you don't know type of.
What do you mean? Like technocrats do? Yes, please. Yes, thank you. We would like a beverage. Thank you very much. Oh, it's so wonderful to be technocrats. Oh, look at all those little people not knowing what to do.
Well, listen. There's an area of information that we know a lot of that a lot of people don't know about.
Right.
And I always.
No, I mean this is a shtick. I don't really. I'm actually pretty angry about it. So about how some geeks have been acting lately.
It's yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, listen. I look at it like this, right? Before the TV became a computer, I didn't really know what TVs, how they worked, with all of the TV technology and TV broadcasting and stuff. Right. But I knew a lot about computers.
Right.
So I was technical in one area and not another. It's just I grew up with computers. TVs, kind of the technology for traditional TVs was before my time. But people that grew up with TVs, probably took a few, that were interested in it, took a few apart, knew all the components, knew how everything worked. So the point is, there's always going to be an area. I think you said this on one of your shows, right? The days of the Renaissance man who knew everything.
Dead.
Is gone.
It died 100 years ago, for sure. Yeah.
So anyone who can get arrogant about what they know really doesn't recognize what they don't know.
Right. Yes.
So
yeah, and if it makes you feel better, my arrogance is faux arrogance. I'm not really, this is me doing sarcastic satire of how I see other people acting.
Yeah, I didn't mean to catch.
No.
But I just
it's important. This is nobody gets there. I actually appreciate you pushing back on that because I never got to say that before. I'm not really. I don't look down my nose at people. I really don't.
I know always, you don't. Of course.
And I mean, you see, I'm part of a user group. When people walk in and they don't know anything, I try to get them to learn about it because I think it's really important. And actually, it scares me when people don't know, because I feel like they're on the outside looking in, like they're not part of the process anymore.
Right.
To me, that's wrong.
Yeah.
You know.
Well, I don't see it as wrong. I see it as, I guess it is a kind of wrong, but again, not everybody's going to be interested.
It's not anyone's fault.
Not everybody's going to be interested in everything. Right?
It's not anyone's fault, right? It's huge. It's complicated. It's extremely technical, and it's you know, it can bulldoze you.
Well,
you know?
well, that's the question, right? That to me is the interesting question. Let's say there's a group of people that are knowledgeable and informed and sort of in control of things, right?
Right.
What is their obligation to someone who might be impacted by something they're going to do that's not knowledgeable, informed, and maybe negatively impacted? What do you think the obligation might be there?
Well, so I don't know. I mean, this is are people required to be good stewards? It's stewardship required. Is shepherding.
That's a great way to put it.
People, you know, I mean, this is.
I think they are.
Yeah, I think they are too. The funny thing is, like, a lot of people are very angry with religion. And I'm a Christian, but I'm also, don't worry, I can make any argument I can make as an atheist as well. I'll never make an argument I can't do as both. Yeah, I mean, Christianity, I think, has this right. You know, stewardship is important. You know, caring about other people is important. Teaching them, caring for them, guiding them, you know, protecting them, being a shepherd with the flock. And even if, you know, and I'm not trying to put people down. Sometimes they choose to do that. It's not that they can't be a shepherd. It's not that they can't, you know, but also sometimes they can't. And, you know.
But where does that go off the rails, right? When you have someone who's the shepherd, who's not competent, right? Or doesn't care. Maybe they're competent and don't care. That's the worst, right? Mm-hmm. It's incompetence and don't care is almost forgivable. To me, that's 2/3 of psychopaths right there. You know, right? You know, some of them have learned that society, there's consequences when you mess with society and you don't care about people and you don't look out for people. Mm-hmm. But most of them, yeah, whatever, man. You know, that's your loss, my gain. Yeah.
You know? Yeah. And there's a lot of that lately. I mean, it scares me when that becomes kind of a social flow. Right. And like everyone's just like, yeah, I'm just looking out for me. Number one, that's it, man. Good luck. Bye-bye.
I think it's a very serious concern in our time. You know.
Yeah.
That's
yeah.
And I don't know what's driving people there. You know, it's
well, I think it's
sort of a combination.
I think it's the same drives. I think what happened is technology accelerated. So the problem is that because technology is moving fast. So I think something that's come up on the show before is science a meritocracy? And the answer is sometimes, ideally, yes. But only sometimes in practice, you know. Right. And I think the very best science out there is computer science because it's a meritocracy, because experimentation's near instantaneous. You know, open source is computer science. Mm-hmm. That's how I see. And not everything has to be science. You know, sometimes you can push your edge and you can go for the private venture and try to, you know, yeah, well, our thing works better. You know, I'm not going to do this work for free. This helps you. I'm going to give it to you. Mm-hmm. But if it's something that everybody understands, it tends to show up in open source. And that's exactly what science is. This is the thing that we all understand. Right. You know, and it's a computer science reference model. And it is more or less completely a meritocracy. You fall on your face pretty quickly if your code sucks. Mm-hmm. You know, because someone will say, oh, I see what's wrong with it. Fix it, fork it, and put it up. And then you're done. Right. You know, so.
Yeah, and there's a lot of sharing and peer review like you find in science.
Right. But the problem is ethics. And actually this is perfect. We just spiraled right back down into, this is the next story? Because that would be, no, it's the second to next story. I'm going to skip one story and I'll come back to it. All right. So, OpenAPI GP2 proves a post-fact world. And let me explain what I mean by that. So OpenAPI GP2 is a fake news AI generator written by a research group. And apparently the code is open source. But the problem is it's not really open source yet because they haven't put it out there. Because after they wrote it, it was so good, they decided not to release it. Okay. Because they're like, this is just going to make more problems. So good for them being ethical. Mm-hmm. So then they sat on it for a while, and they're like, oh crap, the best engine that we can come up with to discover when you have AI-generated fake news is the same algorithm that generates it. So if we don't release it, then no one's going to be able to aggregate fake news. Right. So what do? So what they've been doing is they've been releasing it in small pieces. So this is exactly, this kind of thought process is exactly what I'm talking about. And but the thing that's really interesting about that is that actually it changes the framework within which we're working, which we're thinking about the world. And I mean, honestly, if it's not digitally signed, it ain't real anymore. You know, I can't. I think that. Yeah. Like, so if for people who aren't familiar with what digital signature is, a digital signature is when you take something and you cryptographically use a private key and sign something, and then people can use a public key generated by the same algorithm as your private key to verify that this thing is what you think it is. So that's the ideal case of something that's cryptographically signed.
So would you include TLS in that, or SSL?
Yeah. Well, you could.
On a signed site? Yeah.
Pretty much anything with encryption, anything with quality encryption that no one's screaming that has been compromised is a good example of this. And I mean, this is based in math and science. I actually did the math on the probabilities of genetics, and the probabilities of genetics are about 250 million to 1 for the case of the good gene, perfect custody chain, you know, the good gene detection methods. In other words, very high resolution, good custody chain, proving that, hey, this genetic sample belongs to this person, and there's no doubt.
Okay.
So it's 1 in 250 million.
Wait, of getting it right?
Of getting it, you know, 1 in 250 million that it is right. So 1 in 250 million times it'll be wrong. What you think is a match won't actually be a match. It'll actually be someone else.
Oh, so you're saying if everything's done right,
it's 1 in 250 million.
That's wrong.
That's wrong, yeah. So it's very, very good odds. I mean, it blows away anything else.
Right.
And so for, you know, whatever, the 70s, the 80s, and the 90s, that dominated. But now, that's over, man. Now, cryptographic is several order magnitudes better, even in the cheapest case, because that computational speed demands it. So everything else pales in comparison compared to cryptographic signatures. If it isn't signed, you don't know it's real.
Okay.
You know. Anyway, so that was the case I was making. But when we were talking about the earlier point, with the we were talking. Oh no, I've lost the thread. We were talking about the reason I brought up the GP2, the OpenAI GP2, is because it's an example of how fake news and how facts are very difficult to verify as true or not. I mean, you have to cite things and you have to do research for yourself whenever you read anything, because you can't trust it.
Well, that's true enough, and I don't think it's as well. I don't know what this new fake news technology is spitting out, or how it's going to.
Right. I mean, it could be vaporware, but it seems credible.
Well, how it's going to pollute the information sphere, right?
Right.
But you know, if we say that any signed website, right, of a known authority, so anything signed with HTTPS and it matches the URL, and we know it belongs to the authority that's claiming it, then and that in itself is a trusted authority. They're authoritative on what they're publishing. Then it's not as dire as it may seem, right? You just have to have an encrypted website that you sign.
Right.
So you sign your work.
So that's true. And so what it means is that the payload that you thought you were getting is what you were getting. But so there's two situations, right? So in the case of HTTP or HTTPS, I've drawn a little arrow here. Imagine that's the network traffic going back and forth, and it's carrying the information back and forth. And the green things are the payload. If the payload is broken, then you actually have to do encryption on encrypted signatures on another level too. So it's not enough to have the connection between the two devices. You actually need to trust that at least one side of this is accurate. This is one of the things that blockchain fixes, right? So in other words, if this guy signs it, check. If this guy signs that particular payload, then you know that he's verifying this is true. This is what happened, and then he sends it to the encrypted pipe.
Why is it not enough that he published it on his site that has been signed?
Because people change their sites all the time. This is one of the problems that they're having with schools. They don't know what to teach kids when it comes to citation, right? Because everything's on the internet now, right? I mean, I don't have encyclopedias. I had them as a kid, but the encyclopedia, the actual physical encyclopedia, was kind of the
So you're saying
verification.
the URL might have said something different yesterday than it does today.
And that actually happens pretty often.
Right.
And it's a huge problem, and it's one we're not
Updates.
addressing at all.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
crazy.
Yeah.
I mean, and there should at least be a retraction history on pages. Whatever it changes, there should be, look at it. I do this with,
Well, usually there's a correction notification, right?
yeah, on page 52, sometimes.
Yeah.
And I mean, who's going to punish them if there isn't? Because there isn't a system in place to.
Right.
I mean, like, so, like I have this thing, this scientific idea, SivGene, and I have a site for it. So what I do is I actually wrap the whole thing up in Git, and I send it over to GitHub every week. So if I were to turn around and try to change articles, and occasionally I do, this is wrong. Usually it's just a spelling error or something stupid.
Right.
But like there was one case where I actually published an article. I said, okay, my logic was flawed. I fixed this in like 5 different articles. Mm-hmm. All of the changes go up on GitHub. So you can see where I change things.
Right.
So now you have to distrust GitHub for that to be. So in that case, this would be GitHub for me.
Right.
You don't have to trust me. You can trust GitHub.
Right, because you're publishing your revisions and your changes. Well, I think it comes down to you have to trust that the resource that you're depending on is trustworthy.
Yes, that's it.
And authoritative, and that they're going to follow some accepted practices, right? They probably shouldn't be publishing revisions under the same URL. Just change the URL.
Agreed.
V2.
Yes. V2, right. Easy. It's so easy, right? Well, no one wants to lose, what it is, because there's real money in having, it's the same thing when
the link has value, yeah.
The link has value, and actually the tech companies are promoting the opposite idea. Like, let's say a YouTube video. You want to do a quick edit. There's a mistake in it. You don't want to promote something that's not true. You lose everything. Right? If you have 100 likes, you lose the 100 likes in order to put so it's a winner. It's like an all or nothing proposition.
Yeah.
I don't know how we got into this, but this is terrible for everyone. I don't, I don't know. I don't get it. But anyway, so that was
all right.
It came back around to that, and just to and one of the ideas behind the show, actually, I have this deepfake citation thing here in the Dystopia report, which is that you know who Jordan Peterson is?
No.
He's a psychologist, and he's pretty famous. He's been kind of like very independent. Like, he won't pick a political side, and some people in politics have gotten mad at him because he won't. He's like, no, that's just psychology. Leave me alone.
Right,
you know. And at least that's how I perceive it. Some people will say that's not true, but it doesn't. For the purpose of this, it doesn't matter. He's pretty famous in the psychology circuit.
Okay.
I'd say he's top 10. Like he's under Dr. Phil. You know, like he's like. He's
I guess I'm not up on those guys, on those personalities.
Right. So like you know, like maybe an order of magnitude less than Dr. Phil as far as being well known.
Okay.
But people know who he is.
Okay.
So someone actually generated a program that can real time create a text-to-speech version of his voice, which is 100% believable.
Yeah.
So that's one of the reasons that we do video live here, so that we can't deny it happened. Because I mean, like, we're not there on video yet, but we're there on audio, and it's just a matter of time.
Well, we're close, right? I mean, what are they calling them? Deep fakes, right?
Deep fakes, yeah.
Yeah, and you know, I think there's been stuff put out, like deep fakes of Barack Obama.
Oh yeah.
You know, I think that's stuff, and it's very convincing.
Yeah, it's really good. So I mean, like you could put one person's face on another. That's usually what they do. That's usually what the conscientious sites do. And I worry sometimes that the conscientious sites aren't the leaders of the field; that they're a step or two behind. So like, you know, I worry about like this.
Well, what's the
fake news generator?
Legitimate use of this technology, right? You're impersonating.
Nothing.
You're impersonating someone. So what are the conscientious sites?
Well, the conscientious sites are saying, look what's happening. We can do this.
Oh.
Yeah. I mean, you know, so all right, I can give a legit conscientious use case. Someone wants to create a new episode of Star Wars and use the original actors' voices, and they're not all alive. Right?
Okay.
Legitimate. Someone wants to replicate Carrie Fisher's voice.
Right.
You know, like, you know, it could, I mean, of course,
Okay.
it could be a train wreck, right? But it could be good. It
Right.
could be something everyone loves and everyone thought was in good taste and
Yeah.
da, da,
Okay.
da, da, da.
No, I see your point.
Yeah, but of course the negative implications are horrific, right? You could just completely derail states.
Yeah,
you know.
I guess where I automatically went, I mean, you gave a perfectly valid use case, but it is in creating a fiction, right? I was
Right.
thinking, what's the legitimate use case when you're trying to fake a nonfiction?
That's right. Except this is the only the Technocrat live, except no other. I am the Technocrat. No fakes, no deep fakes of this. This is it. If you don't find it on Area 22, it's probably not me.
This can't be deep faked.
Yeah. Right. We're just too intelligent. Our intelligence is too broad and wide for this to possibly be deep faked. Yeah, I don't know.
You know what you gotta do? You know what you gotta do? You gotta put some water feature on here because apparently water is very difficult to fake.
Yes, there you go.
So you need like some
We need a waterfall between the ferns.
or a wave, some kind of wave maker, you know?
Yeah.
Something that it has to be moving water.
What could possibly go wrong? Water and electronics. Yeah, a lot of GoPros. Yeah.
Right.
Oh
Man.
Okay.
No, deep fakes. Listen, it was I don't know if you read it, and I didn't read the entire article, but years ago in Wired magazine, Bill Joy wrote an article, Promise of Peril, right, about a lot of. I mean, he was going in a different direction, but it just accentuates what we're talking about, right? The technology. You have to start focusing on creating human beings that don't want to do these things.
Right.
You know.
Yeah, agreed, totally.
The tech is going, the tech's going forward, and it is becoming more democratized.
The rate of acceleration that what tech is advancing is increasing. I think that's the really interesting part. Is that even solving it today may not solve it tomorrow.
Right.
You know, we need a broader. We need to. A lot of it you mentioned before, arms races. I think that's it. I think a lot of it is a huge arms race, and we need. How do you stop an arms race? A treaty. We need a treaty. You know.
Yeah. Well, you got to. I don't know how you do it. I don't know if it's. You know, it really gets into a discussion. You know, philosophical discussion on the nature of human beings and humanity. Mm-hmm. But you have to do everything you can to remove motive.
Right.
Right. And we're not doing that.
No, we're not even trying. It's not even on the radar.
We're not even trying.
The only place that anybody's discussing this stuff in totality is here. I mean, you heard it here first, but the only place you can get this is here. I don't know. I mean, like, I could be wrong about that. If someone else can point me to someplace else where they're talking about the runaway train of tech ethics, you know, and like we do here, let me know, because I'd love to watch it. I don't even know if we're doing it well. I mean, I'm just trying to approach it.
I don't know of anything offhand in particular, but I'm sure there are think tanks and, you know, people thinking and writing about this. But whether there's a live discussion, I don't know.
You know, I love your optimism, man. It's displaced the dystopia report, though. Yeah.
Sorry,
No optimism allowed.
No optimism allowed. That should be your next tagline.
Yeah. No. Thank you, Bill, for creating the next tag. Optimism, don't bother.
Right.
All right. So apparently, Google has an application called Hire, which people can use to try to parse through resumes and to get possible candidates for their to employ. And they're shutting it down. It's not doing well. And normally I just would have scanned over this one, but I thought it was kind of interesting because I remember, unfortunately, I could only find a citation from 2013. But actually, that's not that long ago. That's only 5 years ago. So probably whatever they said in 2013 still applies to most people that are working at Google. Which is basically someone came out and said, yeah, our hiring practices suck. A lot of the bells and whistles that we have are not working.
Because they were trying to scan resumes for keywords and stuff?
I don't even know what their whole interview process was just like, you know, crazy off-the-wall questions designed to like make someone feel off-center. And like they thought they could create a logical criteria by which if you apply this test to human self-identifies as good employee, and that's not how it went at all. Like, it just didn't work.
Right.
So, and I'm wondering if now this has something to do with the Google Hire shut down. I just thought it was an interesting, I don't know if anyone's using it out there. I've never used it, but
I've never used it.
Apparently they were pitching this at one point, like, let us hire your employees for you, and never mind, don't let us hire your employees for you.
This didn't go so well.
Yeah, it's not going well. Everything's fine. Move along. Nothing to see here.
Nothing to see here. Exactly.
Right. So that came up last week with Jeannie too.
Yeah, I guess the whole scanning for keywords, it's the whole problem of people trying to game the scanner, right? And,
right. And another arms race.
All of a sudden, yeah, exactly. All of a sudden, everybody's throwing all these keywords in, and now it's incomprehensible to a human being looking at it. Right? It's like alphabet soup.
Right.
At least with technical resumes.
Right. And they don't have to trick the humans. They only have to trick the machine.
Yeah.
Right. And to create a sellable product, they don't really care what happens to their customers are already acting in an unethical way, so they don't really care what happens to their customers. They only care that they dupe them long enough that they pay them, and then okay, bye-bye. So they may not actually get the job, but then now they have to deal with this mess of garbage coming into the keyword scanner.
Right.
Whether it's SEO or hiring or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. SEO is search engine optimization, which is if you ever look at the source. So I don't know if people can know how to look at the source. That HTML code you look at on web pages has source code to it. And your browser has a feature where you can look at the source. Mm-hmm. So if you look at that source code, sometimes at the bottom of the code, you'll just see a pile of garbage words.
Yeah.
Or even not at the bottom, like somewhere mixed in there, words that are not visible on the page, or they're visible on the page, but they're buried and you don't really notice them.
SEO is kind of a success story, isn't it? It started out
sort of.
Everybody
it's an arms race, so it can't be a success story overall. It has to be eventually, right?
Well, we could talk about the arms race aspect, but in the beginning.
If I had a flashlight, I'd shine it.
When keywords became significant, there was a lot of lawsuits over trademarked keywords. Like, I think one of the big ones was, Playboy didn't want Playboy being used on porn sites.
Right.
So
ironically.
So they said this was a misuse of their trademark.
Right.
And the sites were like, well, we're not using it to promote or confuse the market. We're just using it as a search term, because search was new. It was like this new thing. Like, okay, like what are they doing?
Right.
But what has happened is, I think the search engines and the index engines have become very smart. To keywords and things like that, and they make sure that you can't just like put 10 of the same keyword in order to increase your rank and stuff like that.
Yes. The stacking type problems have definitely been resolved, and stacking and faking problems have definitely been resolved, and that was great. And honestly, I think it was by like early 2010s, 2011, 2012, 2013, they really had nailed it. I was really like, if I looked for something, I would find it within the first 3 hits every time I Google.
And you'd find good material because
I miss that world.
They're surfacing the stuff that has some sort of merit besides marketing effort.
Right, yeah. So originally, the way I got a tip back in the early days of Linux, earliest for me anyway. It was kind of early days of Linux, and that really the Google was. I'm sure that they don't do this anymore, so I'm not letting anything out, but that Google actually would weigh Linux experts really heavily. So what they would do is they would look at pages of Linux experts and say, well, we trust this guy, right? Because we know he's writing the code that runs our stuff, so he's not a liar. Mm-hmm. So we'll assume that the links he puts on his page are legit. And that was Google in the early days. Right. And that's the system that people started trying to game with keywords. Mm-hmm. Right? Because then they tried to add some more machine learning kind of intelligence to it, and then people started gaming the keywords, and then it turned into an arms race, and then the rest is history. Yeah, but there's something to be said for trusted sources too. That's kind of like the local model, right? That's most governments or societies or organizations start like that, right? I trust that guy. I'm going to listen to what he says,
right?
Because everything he's told me so far has been true, right? And then you extrapolate it, and then you get into trouble.
Well, I think you put your finger on something interesting, because if you have to figure out how to scale that, right?
Right. Yeah. Right? Well,
because
can you?
I remember. I think so.
Okay.
Because this is something I began thinking about, probably 15 years ago or more, right? Every once in a while, you'd be watching a news program or what have you, and someone is speaking on a topic of interest to you, and you find their view compelling and truthful, but you don't have a good way to capture that moment in time, and to sort of put the laser focus on the topic they were talking about, that you'd like to refer to that expert in the future, right?
Yes.
Just on that. I don't believe them on everything, but I believe them on that. I believe them in that area.
Right.
And depending on how broad the discussion got, you might...
It makes perfect sense. Nobody's a Renaissance man. They don't exist anymore.
Right. But that's it. I watch it on a news program, or I read it somewhere, and I say that's interesting. But there's no action item on that, right?
Right.
It's just something they gave me useful information. I added to my own knowledge, and maybe I draw on it in the future.
Right.
But if I wanted to reference that individual as an authority, maybe when I'm going to the voting booth, it's very difficult for me to factor them in, right? And I've had ideas about how you could do something like that, actually.
Really?
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, you could.
Do tell. Or you don't want to blow it?
Well, no. I mean, it's no. I mean, it just has. It comes down to a way of organizing the information, right? Because it becomes a problem of marrying semantics with statistics.
Okay.
So you have to simplify the semantics, because we're not at true AI levels yet.
Right. It's all AI is not real yet.
Yeah. Artificial intelligence, but you can simplify the semantics so that the metrics can be useful.
All right.
And then you could. I've actually done the sort of the pseudocode on how you could develop a system where that could inform your vote. In each election cycle, and then of course you need.
Of course, you'd be up against the deep fake citation.
Well, there's a whole next level of problem, right? But to your point, I think cryptography can get us past that, and maybe something blockchain based, maybe not.
Right. If stuff is signed, at least at least somebody's. I mean, the problem. It isn't even. We're talking about like, oh, I trust him, right? Because you can see him, because our brains are good at calculating enormous amounts of information about how a face looks, how a voice sounds, and because you're physically there with them. But you get away from local at that scale, and I don't know who these people, it's just the same, someone it happens all the time, username fake outs.
Yeah.
On Twitter or Facebook or something, it's one letter off and you think it's somebody else, and
I started thinking about these things before these were real concerns, and they're definitely real concerns now. But I think the answer is simply like you've described. It's in encryption, it's in signing.
Right.
You have to get pretty sophisticated. But all of this.
It's weird that keyring networks haven't taken off. You'd think there would be one that everybody trusted, but I mean, even with so many people using Gmail, so few of them use DKIM. It's like, what? Why? Why not? No, to me, the whole reason to use Gmail is I'm guilty too. I don't have DKIM turned on.
Yeah, I don't either. Yeah.
Right, but I mean,
because the other side has to participate, right?
No, you can. So Google can be the third party, and they can sign your email, and then the other person, if they decide to, can take that email and that DKIM information, go to Google server and manually verify. Yes, this email is real. Google, as long as to whatever degree I trust Google,
but
this is real.
It's not obfuscated. They can just go and verify the source.
They can verify that the source is.
But they don't have to go there just to read it.
This person really said this. Yeah.
But they don't. They
can just read it.
They can just read it. Oh, okay. So if someone wanted to check the source, they could do that.
Yeah. This came up in 2016 with the WikiLeaks. So this was a big.
Right.
There was a whole group of people who were like, the WikiLeaks were completely fabricated.
Right. Wasn't me.
Yeah, there wasn't me to fit. So true, man. That's what it was. It wasn't me. The glove don't fit. I'm sorry, he wasn't guilty. That was a completely different. Don't sue me. Anyway, But yeah, there was for a week. That was the story. Is that they were completely fabricated. I can tell you the whole. You probably don't care, but I can tell you how that came about. But it was demonstrably untrue. And as a computer scientist, I'm like, what the fuck is wrong with you people? Some of these emails are DKIM signed. At least those emails are true. Dead, full stop.
Right.
End of discussion.
Right.
You know, they get, yes, maybe some of the others were there could have been fabricated ones stuck in there, but the ones that were DKIM signed, unless you don't trust Google anymore, which is like a huge coup d'etat because they do so much military stuff.
I mean, listen, and you don't even have to pick sides on this, right? I mean, there are senators that don't know how Facebook work, right? So, I mean,
yeah, Ted Stevens series of tunes. Which is brilliant and also horrifying at the same time, right? Like, wow, he kind of figured it out. And is that where people are? Yeah.
I always take it back to what I know about how old televisions used to work.
Right.
Before they were computers, right? Computers I know something about.
Right.
Old televisions I know nothing about.
Right.
How does a vacuum tube make a picture? I have no idea.
Well, yeah, I know, but I won't bore you with the details. Yeah, just because I'm like OCD Hulk, right? I'm not actually OCD, but I want to know how everything works.
Yep.
Yeah. I have to know everything, so I take stuff apart like a maniac. Oh, sorry. Actually, I'm gonna slide out of frame and get some sugar while I'm sliding out of frame.
Was that the sign to get back in frame?
Yes. So for folks who don't know, Steve will do acrobatics sometimes for us. He'll put on a show. He'll juggle. Nice. So nice. Yeah. So we get a show too. But you guys don't. Yeah. Sorry.
Better one. Who knows?
Yeah. if you wanna, you can watch Steve's show if you want. Give you a shout out. Why not the jump cut? Yeah. And also if you want to actually see Steve's hijinks during the Technocrat Live, come be a guest on my show. I would love to have you. So, no problem getting guests, but scheduling is always a problem. Mm-hmm. But no problem getting guests. But the more the merrier. So
yeah, sure.
Yeah, I mean, I've been pleasantly surprised. I thought I'd be done by now, and I'd be recycling
You've been going a long time now, right?
Yeah, I mean, I haven't had to do any repeats. I thought I was going to be just like, okay, I'm done, and let's repeat, and bring the same people on, and people have been really responsive. Almost everybody I ask says yes, which is like mind-boggling to me. So. Well, and thanks for being one of them. I appreciate it.
No, absolutely. And I think it has a lot to do with your personality, and people have had a chance to talk with you off the. It's not your deodorant or lack thereof. I'm just kidding.
It happens. It's a real problem. I've actually said before that's my one that I will step out of political correctness for that. Please, every few days take a shower, please. I've worked with people that don't take showers. Don't do it. It's awful. It's not a cultural thing.
You know what?
It goes wrong. It really goes wrong, folks.
I'm just not going to touch that.
Well, you know what it is? So
I don't know. No, tell me what it is. If it's not a cultural thing, which is what I always thought it was.
Well, it is a cultural thing. But the problem is, it's the same problem that people have with cubicles. Whenever you have an open air situation, so sound and smell specifically, can have no barriers. Right. Vision has a natural barrier in that environment. Mm-hmm. The barriers in literally you could smell up an entire building.
Right.
One person can smell up an entire building. You can ruin a building for everyone in it.
Yeah, sure.
And even sound will bounce at some point, and will deaden and will lessen as you go from room to room to room. So yeah, I'm like, come on, really?
Yeah, that's kind of. I'll tell you, that's kind of a.
Just science it, folks. Just science it.
Right.
Well, you could argue the opposite, like people who go overboard with perfume.
Yeah. I agree. It's the same kind of problem, honestly. Mm-hmm. But my pet peeve is people that. Probably going to alienate. I don't know how much of your audience I'm going to alienate, but
how dare you, sir? I'm already alienated. I'm offended. I'm out of here.
You go to like a beach or a park. It's a beautiful day, and then someone comes by and they're like smoking a cigarette or a cigar, and they're stinking up like the whole place.
Right.
That's my pet peeve.
Yeah. Well, you know what?
I'm like,
you're totally right.
I'm trying to get some fresh air.
Fuck yeah. Thank you, Bill. This is why I was really excited to have you on my show. You're right. That is a really great, because it's not just cancer, right? Because, sure, any amount of secondhand smoke theoretically could cause cancer, especially if you have no immune system to speak of in the first place.
My kids are running around, right? And they're sticking up.
But yeah, the same argument against people being allowed to smoke wherever the heck they want is also the BO argument, is also the perfume argument. It's a shared space, and there's no boundaries. There's no barriers that can't be surpassed by this. Right, yeah, okay.
But,
cool, you got my back on it, even if you didn't mean to.
Yeah, I mean, listen, it's live and let live to an extent also, but it's just...
Oh, no, I just live for confrontation. I'm just walking around like, like, who could I fight with,
I'm just...
You don't know computers!
I'm just glad the trend in smoking is going down,
Right.
that's all. I'm not a fan.
Yeah. Well, when they cure cancer, it's going to reverse. You know that, right? They touch on this side sometimes in sci-fi.
Yeah. No,
futures where everyone smokes because
makes sense,
it probably not in our lifetime, but
well, sadly, it's like what you see with AIDS, right?
Yeah.
There's now a pill,
Yep.
or a bunch of pills, and people take it far less seriously.
Yeah. Actually, I've been.
I'm not even going to touch the vaccine thing, but
Yeah. So they were working on the vaccine before it was cool to talk about it at Rock, and so there is I don't even look. People should never suffer a disease for in the moment choices. I think that's crazy. I would never support that. So I couldn't. So to me, it's obviously a good thing.
Oh, of course.
Yeah. I mean, there's no. What are the long-term societal effects? I don't know. We're gonna all be hippies again, I guess. I doubt it. I really doubt it. I don't think we're going back there. But
no. I mean, there's.
Maybe that would be a good thing. Maybe it wouldn't. I don't even know.
It's great that people could be helped, but it's tragic that people minimize the danger because there's it's like like not learning how to swim because someone can throw you a life jacket. It's kind of a weird way to go.
Well, all right. So this is the problem with analogies, right? Because it could break down. I can do something really terrible with this analogy, but at the same time, it's kind of true. Like the problem with that is if everybody in the pool doesn't know how to swim because they're counting on a lifeguard to save them, some of them are going to drown because you can't save everybody. Right.
Yeah.
So
you would get to that point.
Yeah, I mean, you could look at health care costs the same way and say, if everybody starts drowning, guess what, buddy? You're going to be waiting in line in the emergency room a long time before they talk to you.
Yeah. No, it's a fair point, and it's a good point to help. I think guide people to not be so cavalier about it. Mm-hmm. I don't know what's breaking down in educating young people that this is still like a really bad thing.
Yeah,
the messaging's not there. I don't know what's not there.
So what are you hearing? I mean, I've seen the commercials, so I know about it. And actually, I had just meant to pose the question to my wife. Is this something we tell? Do we want to put our kids on this? Right? Because one of our kids is getting to become a teenager. I'm not encouraging him to have.
Oh wait!
Sex too young.
You're talking about HPV or HIV?
HIV, I was talking about.
Oh, okay.
There's also an HIV pill as well.
There's a vaccine?
That's not a vaccine.
I'm talking about the cure, or not the cure, but the. Well, I guess I don't know if they classify it as a cure, but the treatment. I'm talking about
the HPV. Oh, okay. That I know more about.
I'm talking about HIV treatment, right?
Oh, yeah, I'm talking about HIV too. Yeah.
There's a vaccine?
So no, but I mean, there's a pill that supposedly will lower the odds of you getting it. Also,
But it's something. The way you put it, you have to be on it. You have to like take it. Chronically or routinely.
Yeah.
Oh, I wasn't even aware of that, to be honest.
Yeah, but so they also have they found a gene that is definitely immune to AIDS. So, but the problem is it's only present in 15% of the people. Right,
but these are the people that even when there was no cure...
50% of Europeans, excuse me. So only 15% of Europeans are people with European genetics.
Like Anglo-Saxon.
Yeah. There was some... I think they found... All right, so this is like getting sketchy now. But because I could be wrong on this, but somebody told me this. I did not read this, but it was a credible source that it was actually a prostitute that had been exposed hundreds of times. They're like, why did you never have AIDS? She should totally have HIV and AIDS.
Right.
And apparently they found that it was a genetic. There was some kind of mutation in her white blood cells that created a resistance to HIV, and they've been working with that ever since to try to come up with a a vaccine, and there are vaccine trials out there.
Well, there's always been
sure.
people like this, right?
Right.
There were always people.
Well, it just depends on the disease, right? It's different people for different diseases.
I mean, with HIV, even from the early in its height in the 80s, there were people that were surviving, and nobody knew why, right?
Right.
The virus was there, and then it wasn't there.
Right.
And they tried to study those people.
Right.
Probably
Well, the mutation could have happened. I mean, so generally speaking, mutations happen in high populations. When the bigger the population, the faster it's going to happen. So, of course, the population's grown to something the Earth has never seen before.
Right.
So, of course, the odds of it happening in our time have gone way the hell up.
Right.
So, yeah, it's not surprising that this
See,
happened.
that's a good thing with population growth, right?
That diseases crop up more quickly?
No, the mutation against disease.
Oh, no. I think the mutation was already there. So I don't know if it was a mutation to resist something else. So the funny thing is a lot of things that people categorize as diseases are actually beneficial to someone. Right? So, I mean, the most obvious case is like sickle cell anemia, right? It can be a terrible disease, debilitating, but it's also malaria, resistance. So if you live in a place that has a lot of malaria,
right.
It's an advantage, especially if you have a lesser case of it, if you have a minor case of it,
right,
where you're not struggling to breathe, great, you can't get malaria. And it's someplace where you get, where chance of malaria infection over a lifetime is almost 100%. That's a huge advantage.
Right.
Yeah, it's very hard to talk about Darwin because it's so brutal, right? And a lot of people, I think a lot of people really haven't accepted what Darwin means.
Yeah.
They don't want to deal with the brutality of it. And that, I mentioned that actually. I think you commented on in your notes on my notes.
Is that one I touched on?
Your notes on my notes. That sounds. Is that sufficiently nerdy? Where was? I was basically saying that Darwin has just not been accepted yet in full, and it's because for Darwin you can think people accept it for animals. It's not like I'm not saying creationism is dominating the planet, although it certainly isn't gone, but people cannot talk about it when it pertains to humans because basically what it means is dead kids. And nobody wants. I mean, it's terrible to talk about that.
Right.
But that's what the science is, So you can't even commission a study. You can't. I'm not saying take any action. I'm saying just reading what's happening out there. You can't even get good information on it because people can't emotionally handle what's happening.
Right.
I don't. This is not on my bucket list of things to fix, but yeah. I mean, I can't even imagine where to begin to fix it. But I guess it's up to the individual to be centered enough to be, okay, I can handle this. I have to be realistic about how this. I mean, comedians deal with this. George Carlin had a great bit on, on Darwinism, and like how when he was a kid, if there was a school shooting, they just keep doing their arithmetic after it was over, right? Probably not, but kind of.
Well, he had a great bit on Planet Earth.
Yeah.
He's like, listen, the Earth is going to be fine. You and I'll be gone,
yeah.
But the Earth will be fine. You know what the Earth's been through before us?
Yeah. You probably know. I don't know.
Earth will be fine.
I don't know. If, probably most of you people know.
No, I don't subscribe to that. By the way, we should take care of the Earth.
What are most people? What are people put here on Earth to do? Right? Plastic. The Earth couldn't figure out how to make plastic without us. Now we made all the plastic we need. Bye, people. We got all the plastic we need. Yeah. So I don't know.
Yeah.
It's kind of dark. Well, that's definitely dystopian.
Yeah, I don't know exactly everything you were saying with Darwin, but yeah, I mean, natural selection is brutal. I get that.
Yeah, it's brutal and it's hard to apply to humans.
I don't know where you went with the kids and stuff, but.
Well, no, but that's because think about it, right? Yeah. I mean, nothing kills us anymore. I mean, generally, statistically, the place where Darwin is most active is car accidents, because that's the thing that kills the most people, right? And then heart disease. So, being good at driving and being able to resist that last cookie. That's it. That's natural selection right now.
Those are the winners.
Those are the winners right now. you know.
Well, you've heard of the marshmallow experiment, right?
No.
There's truth to being able to resist the last cookie.
Well, okay.
Yeah, no, there's a whole.
No, tell me about it.
There was this experiment done by psychologists where they would put kids into a room, and they would put a marshmallow in front of them. They said, you can eat that marshmallow, but if you wait 10 minutes, I'll come and give you another marshmallow. Without eating the marshmallow. If you wait 10 minutes and don't eat the marshmallow, I'll come and give you another marshmallow.
I have seen this. Yes,
And
okay.
This is like an enormously high predictor of how you're going to do in life.
Right.
If
you can resist that
the
marshmallow,
you're going to do very well. If you eat the marshmallow, well, good luck.
I wouldn't starve to death, but I would wait a long time. Knowing myself.
And this goes on. I think I don't know how many marshmallows you can get to before they say, okay, eat the marshmallows, we're done.
Right.
But being able to not eat the marshmallow or not eat the cookie is a huge predictor.
Yes, I actually. So I was doing looking through some other experiments for Civgene stuff, and that was one of the things I saw on the way. Turns out it wasn't pertinent to what I was looking at, but that's why I forgot it. But yeah, you're totally right.
Yeah.
Verified. That's real. Look it up. Yeah.
We need the waves. We need the water.
Is this really happening? Am I awake right now?
You think this could be deep faked?
It's funny. The best part is, right now, my hope is that this show is popular enough that at some point, someone will walk by, someone else watching us do that with not hearing the sound and going, "What the fuck are they doing?"
Right.
That's how I know I made it.
That's how you know you made it.
Doing that.
Yeah.
Where it blasted through sound effects and everything.
That's right.
That's the big time.
You were just above the NASDAQ building.
Right. Yeah.
Selfies are just you doing this in the background.
do the thing. Yeah. And then they find out it was from Wayne's World, and then everybody shifts over to the new site, and I'm no longer popular. Darn it. But the dystopia report's mine.
That's right. That's right. Nobody can take that from you.
Nobody can take that for me for the next until I finally give up the ghost, which will hopefully be never. I mean, I don't know. At some point, I got to just reboot it, and I just got to start inviting people back on. I mean, it's been months and months and months now, So I don't know when it's going to be, but eventually. So
the show.
Yeah, the show.
I thought you were talking about you.
Yeah,
I thought you were going to head into a singularity.
I'm just going to fade off into the background.
We're gonna put you on silicon.
Right. Is Matt getting dusted? What's happening?
Is that the real Matt?
Yeah. I don't know. Let's see. The Google hire shutdown, deepfake. Oh, so we actually have some kind of cool news.
Well, let me ask you this: is this the longest you ever gone through the news segment?
Yeah.
I mean,
so far you have taken 2 different prizes. First of all, you're the only one who actually answered this like a freaking questionnaire. Holy cow!
No, I just went through your list. I said this is something I would have a reaction to.
This is not an insult, man. You are a machine. Hire this guy.
Wow.
Anyway, so. And the other one, yes, but this is the longest I've gone through the news segment.
I thought so.
The panels, actually, the news segments tend to drag in the panels because everyone has an opinion, and then it just turns into a free-for-all, and that's what I like. So I just let it happen, and chaos ensues, and eventually, by the time there's like a dumpster fire and a couple of crashed cars in the background, then I'm like ready for the next item. Mm-hmm. So Disney World has actually created a ride that I'm interested in.
Right.
Like, I mean, I've been to Disney. I'm sorry if you're a Disney fan, but I've been to Disney World, and some of those animatronics from the 50s and the 60s are pretty freaking sad.
Right.
I mean, they're pretty bad, folks. We've moved on from that. I understand there's a nostalgia aspect to it.
It's what built the company. Yeah.
It's what built the company. And it's kind of cool seeing it because, like, okay, now I know it was cool a half century ago, right. But it's not really cool anymore.
Yeah.
And actually, a lot of kids who have played Five Nights at Freddy's are probably terrified of them, or at least they think they're hysterical because that's the only reaction you can have after seeing murder robots with similar proportions.
Right.
But they had a lot of problems selling their Star Wars park because it's just not doing well, because Star Wars isn't doing well, because the last episode I think wasn't that popular. Whatever, I know the truth. Come on.
Yeah,
but
I had no idea about that.
yeah, 8 was not that good, I thought. 7 was excellent, and 8 was there was a lot of self-rule breaking. Like when you create a fiction, you want to create a set of rules.
Yeah, like a universe.
And then you don't really break those rules, and if you want to create a new rule, you have to establish it well ahead of time. Yeah, that was all kind of like,
Right. We're gonna do
there was some, and it was bad. Like some stuff was good, but a lot of stuff was bad.
What was that? The second one produced under Disney?
Yeah, that was the second one produced. It's weird because the first one was, I thought the first one was like right after, I think I was on line with Return of the Jedi, which was like, wow, I can't believe they did that, and then now.
I'm embarrassed to say I'm behind on my Star Wars, but I thought.
I'm going to spoil Star Wars for you?
No, it's fine. It's fine. It wouldn't spoil it for me because
Right.
it's the experience, really. Star Wars is the experience to me.
Right. So they have, actually, I'd say just go on this. They're having a space cruise, so it's going to be a 2-day long space cruise, 2 nights. Sorry. So you check into a park at Disney, and you walk into what you perceive to be a spaceship, and you are on a variety of spaceships and planets for 2 nights and 3 days, I presume.
Wow.
So to create an immersive experience where it really feels like you're on a cruise ship, but in space, an interstellar cruise ship.
Visiting different planets.
Visiting different planets in the Star Wars universe.
That does sound interesting.
It sounds amazing,
Yes.
freaking holodeck stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think that I don't want to give Disney free PR. I mean, there's lots of things, but they have their hand in everything now. But like, I gotta say, this sounds good.
They have at least one red alert where they shake the ship.
Oh yeah, well, Star Wars, not Star Trek.
Oh, sorry, I'm
Yeah.
confusing my universe.
Well, no, but they have the klaxons in Star Wars too.
Right. I don't know if you see ships shaking as much in Star Wars, except when Han Solo is flying, like a lunatic.
Yeah. You see his dice kind of going.
Right. Well, that's Spaceballs.
Right, Spaceballs.
Now you're all over the place.
Those aren't his dice. All right. That's not my finger. All right. So, well, we just lost everyone.
Right.
All right, sorry about that.
It's over now.
Well, at least they got to see you for a while before they had to bail. So now there is a new word that we can bring into the vocabulary: space crime.
Okay.
I think space crime, baby.
Thank God we have a
by
space force.
A space criminal.
We're ready, man. We're ready. This is one we're ahead of.
Right. We're ahead of space crime with our space force. We can get those space criminals.
Maritime law thing in space?
That's the first thing I thought of too. I don't know the source of the legal structure of this, but one would imagine, because it's ships and it's space, that it would be maritime law, right?
Yeah.
So and apparently it seems to work like maritime law. So apparently someone on the ISS, an astronaut on the ISS. So this is a person from the United States, because they're an astronaut, not a cosmonaut, the International Space Station, has tried to log into her husband's account. Her husband's bank account in a way that was illegal. I think they were in the process of getting divorced or something, and or there was a court order against it or something.
So she's doing research on the space station.
Yeah, she's doing research on the space station.
What have you? Yeah.
But she used the internet to get into his bank account, and apparently that was illegal. So it may be the first space crime.
Wow.
Right.
And then they're trying to sort out jurisdiction.
Yeah. Well, they apparently the way it just works is if you commit a crime from whatever country you're from, then you just extradite it back to that country.
Okay.
So it'd be interesting to see if there was someone from a less.
Space law.
What?
Space law. Sorry for interrupting.
No, this is fine. Go ahead.
Space law is basically saying that. Space law is basically saying that there was wars going back and forth or arguments after the Cold War. They basically established that what happens in space needs to be argued and fought upon by the countries who have presence in space.
Right.
So, starting in 1912, they started administering space laws, but since then they've been kind of altering it, and it's pretty much unanimously agreed you can't do things like drug use and murder and stuff like that in space.
Oh, so there's also a set of laws specifically for space.
You go on behalf of a country.
Oh, okay.
So I assume the country that you go on behalf of would allow something.
Wow.
However, if you go on your own, I feel like it applies to your home country.
Right. So you have a legal degree. So could you tell us about space law?
I can tell you nothing about it.
It's pretty obvious.
I put that in there that way just so I could ask you about space law because I knew you wouldn't be able to answer it.
Well, listen, I'm not licensed in.
Nobody knows.
space.
I had a lawyer on last week. I would have asked her if I had it then.
But I mean, listen. There's different types of jurisdiction. There's different ways for authorities to get their grips on you.
So we are now out of the dystopian report. So let's go on to Bill Catlan. Thank you. Finally, we can get to you. So you have a legal degree. I had no idea you have a legal degree. Tell me the story of that. How did you get a legal degree?
I do. I actually. It was a long and windy road, but I started out. I had a very early interest in computers and computer science, and I taught myself programming as a kid, and I was always messing around with computers. And I started studying computer science in college and some computer engineering, and I found that computer engineering wasn't my thing. It was a totally different discipline, so I kind of put that on the shelf. And the computer science stuff.
Wait, so you put it on the shelf? You just weren't into it, or
computer engineering?
Engineering.
Yeah.
So what was it that discouraged you? Was it the difficulty of the math? Was it just you just didn't imagine yourself enjoying the rewards of electronics or understanding chips? Or
well, it was definitely a different discipline. Studying circuits as opposed to computer code and computer logic. So it was just I thought, in my young, 18-year-old brain, that going into computer engineering would be getting closer to the bare metal of the computer, which it would be, but that would be more or less the same type of discipline as computer science, which it is not. It's completely different. It's more rooted in math and physics, and I enjoy math and physics. I think one of the things that discouraged me was I took a summer job at a Home Depot, and I was working at Home Depot alongside seasoned Grumman engineers who had just been impacted by the 90s cutback on the defense budget.
Yeah, that'll do it.
Yeah, so I'm thinking to myself, this is a lot of hard work, a lot of money, and I don't like what I'm seeing. And of course I was young and impressionable, so.
Can we just take a 30-second from that? And we'll come back to your where you were at Home Depot. But this is actually kind of important. So it's tough when you're in any kind of white collar. If you're looking to go into any kind of white collar field, the more specialized you are, the thinner the market, and the longer it can be before you find a job. And so you're important, and you're doing good work, and you're doing creative work. And then when there's no work, there's really no work. You're up a creek.
Yeah, it can be that way, especially for these engineers, doing defense work and having the whole defense industry move elsewhere.
In Long Island, where we grew up, I grew up here. Did you grow up here? Or?
I did, yeah.
Okay, yeah. So where we grew up, it's a huge aeronautics and defense industry through the company Grumman. And it was just a massive installation. There was a ton of airplane stuff. A lot of people argue that Long Island, while flight certainly wasn't discovered here, that Long Island was the cradle of aviation. A lot of early testing happened here for experimental military planes and military.
Fairchild also, yeah.
Yeah. So and that stuff is all pretty much folded up at this point. So there's still a plant there for Grumman, but it employs nowhere near the amount of people it used to. So, the shock came in the 80s, really.
Sure.
Yeah, the big shock
This
came
was
in the
early
80s.
90s when I was experiencing this.
Right, yeah, and it continued throughout, since.
And in addition to aviation, specifically defense aviation, right?
Right.
That was a big component of the.
You just signed 1,000 contracts that says you can't go work for someone else and talk about this.
Yeah.
Yeah, your entire work experience is null and void.
Well, I didn't even think of the non-compete aspect. I just viewed it as the industry.
You probably didn't even know about it back then, right?
No, I wasn't thinking about it.
Yeah.
But the industry packed up and left these guys, and these are experienced engineers, and I'm studying engineering, and I'm thinking, what the hell am I doing? So, and to your point, I had some awareness that, certain fields you're going to have to live in certain places in order to find work in them. And I just had this other natural interest in computer science, and I always had that skill set I could fall back on. So that's kind of a long way of circling back to, I then decided I wanted to do something else with the classroom time, right, with the live instructor time. So I started studying things like pre-law and economics, which then led to law school. Because the thing about pre-law, which is sort of in my case, it was actually a curriculum.
Why pre-law and economics? How did that come about? What made you switch gears like that?
I just had an interest in, kind of how these Grumman engineers ended up working at Home Depot when they should have been in the.
Oh, so you thought it was a legal problem, so you went to that.
I had an awareness that it was it was something to do with the structure of the economy and.
This is a real, it's interesting because that's a really important subtlety that a lot of people miss, but you got it. I mean, especially at a young age without so much experience, economies exist at the mercy of laws, right? I mean, it's a boxing match, like people like to, sometimes people talk about venture capitalism versus vulture capitalism,
right, right.
And the difference is, venture capitalism is kind of like takes place within an arena and inside of a ring, and there's rules and there's a ref, and vulture capitalism is kind of just a street fight, and whatever you pick up off the ground, you can hit the other guy in the face with, And
well, there's power dynamics.
See, really, the law makes a big difference in how the economy operates.
Well, law, negotiating, contracts, all of this, and the structures under which you operate. The laws can provide or take away leverage. Depending on where you sit in relation to the law.
Right.
So I had some. I didn't have the awareness I have of it now, but I had some awareness that something else at play here. Right. These are capable engineers, and they're taking jobs at Home Depot because they have to make ends meet. Right. So I'm saying to myself, what's wrong with this picture? Right. What happened here? So.
Yeah,
So it made me want to look into things more.
It's really awesome.
Kind of like what you were saying. In the same sense, I wanted to pull this apart and understand how this worked and why it worked this way.
Right. Yeah, that's great. My mom has an MBA, had an MBA, and she really she approached computers from a business point of view and brought me with her. And I was like, oh, okay, now I know why this is happening. So that I have a very similar, not that kind of shocking Home Depot moment, but a very similar path and background. Where I looked at computers from an economics point of view and went, oh, okay, I get it. I see what happened here.
So I definitely became very interested in the economic aspect of everything, really. So I thought that was a better use of classroom time, right? Because you can read a book, but having that exchange with a professor, to me, I found that very valuable. Where I studied at Binghamton University, they modeled the curriculum after actually the Oxford curriculum. They married politics, philosophy, and economics, the PPE program. Oxford's been doing it for over 100 years, and Binghamton had a program. They kind of tweaked the name of it. They called it politics, philosophy, and law. But I added an economics major to sort of mirror the Oxford program.
Nice.
And I actually was taught by an Oxford professor.
Great.
For a couple of my philosophy classes. So.
I was taught physics by one of those ex-Grumman guys. So 3 times. I got it right the 3rd time.
Right. The same course 3 times?
Yeah. Well, the time the ex-Grumman guy is the time I passed it. So good for him.
Yeah, very good. Yeah, he probably.
Intro to algebra by a guy from NASA.
Really?
Nice.
Yeah. So that's not so bad when that happens.
Yeah. So he probably made it real for you, and
he did. He was one of the designers of the lunar lander. So
I think I saw this guy do a presentation at our local library.
Really?
I can't remember his name. If you said
Nolan.
That might be it.
Yeah.
That might be it. Does he do kids presentations?
I don't know. He didn't tell us about that.
Okay.
He did write a textbook, so it's entirely possible. He had the gift for teaching. So.
Yeah. Actually, maybe it was his father that worked on the lunar landing. Anyway.
We're really diving in there. getting in deep, getting to know the politics of New York.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
So that's, the thing about these philosophy courses, right, especially pre-law, sort of political philosophy,
Right.
is they tend to raise more questions than they answer.
Right.
So it kind of leaves you, wanting, like, well, how do these questions get answered in the real world, right? When disputes arise and there's controversies that need to be resolved, they can't debate it forever, right? You can't
Right.
write a book.
As conveniently as possible is the answer.
Yeah, well, the answer under our legal system is
Sometimes it's right, and sometimes it's just convenient.
True,
Yeah.
but it basically, it gets answered through our legal process and, through the framework that our Constitution lays out.
Right.
And you arrive at finality, right? And
Right.
so that's what interests me in law, right? Sort of tying up these loose ends about these political, philosophical questions.
Right.
So that's how I ended up in law school, and then I actually.
That's great. That's a great origin story.
I actually came out of law
Are you just
school.
trying to win this show? I mean, I don't,
I didn't even know I was in a competition. I thought, it was an exhibition.
No, you're not. It's totally an exhibition. Yeah, no, this isn't. Everybody who brings completely different things, and I had no idea that your story was so rich, and I'm really glad I have you on here so I could ask
thank you.
and find this out.
Yeah.
And think now you don't have to tell this story to everybody over and over and over because you
That's
can
right.
tell.
I could just play.
Just
play
give them a URL and then get out of my face. And let me know after you watch it.
as long as it's signed.
As long as it's signed. It was live, people. I swear.
I don't want the deep fake.
No deep fakes. Yeah. Deep fake.
I don't know where I was, but that's how I did. And then I actually out of law school, I actually jumped back into tech. I spent a couple years trying to figure out how I could marry these two worlds. But things were pretty hot with what was going on with the .com boom and stuff at the time.
Okay.
So
this is like late 90s, early 2000s.
yeah, this would have been.
Or was it the 2008 to 2012 kind of rush?
No. It was the late 90s.
Late 90s,
Yeah.
okay.
So I'd say when they graduated.
Things were insane then.
94.
Yeah, they were really on fire. Especially late
Yeah,
98. Oh my God, it was
Yeah.
crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah, the stuff that was happening was.
Yeah, so I just felt.
I felt embarrassed for the people spending the money, kind of.
Well, did you ever go to any of the ISP cons?
I did not. No, I did not.
Oh, they were fantastic.
Yeah.
They gave a Hummer away at every ISP con. that's where things were,
I mean, of course they did. No.
right?
We need to be drinking so we can drink to that. What do you want to drink?
I'll drink some white,
Okay, some white. Here you go.
please.
Yeah, I'll pour you. Just say when. All right. So it seems you can't talk about swag at conferences.
That's good. Thank you.
Okay, cool. I might open a new one. I think it's not corks, so I might be okay.
You won't have to struggle on camera.
I won't have to struggle on camera. I might have to struggle on camera. Hold on. Please hold. Dun, 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 dun. Oh no, it's a cork!
Uh-oh.
Oh, what did I do?
You got this.
I'll be drinking in a little while.
Okay.
Thanks, man. Our mission here on the Technocrat Live is to make Steve's life as difficult as possible.
Coffee, wine.
Right now, I wish there was workshop noises in the back. Like we had a sound effect button, so I could just like.
You got to get some sound effects going. Get some sound effects going.
I'm bleeding.
The bottle's winning. The cork's winning.
Oh, this is awful. You know what? I really sincerely hope, Steve, that one day I get to engineer your show so you can do it back to me, so I know how it feels.
No, I will give you like really stressful corks to open. Like I'll give you $30 like bottles of scotch with corks in it.
and guests that demand that they smell the cork to verify its authenticity. Thanks, man.
Take a critical swig, sort it off.
Yes, nice. Wait, let's smell the cork. I have no idea what I'm doing. I don't really do that. Do you do that? I don't know.
No, I don't.
I don't really know. All right, I'll try not to dribble it on my clothes while I'm.
Well, cheers.
Cheers to Tech Swag.
To tech swag, yeah, to Hummers.
Yeah, to Hummers. Free Hummers. Because that's practical. All right.
Yeah, and then they started having them twice a year, and they'd still give out a Humvee at every conference.
Wow.
That's the way things were going. Yeah, it was a heady time with a lot of money flowing.
Yeah. Well, they were right about how much the market was going to change from tech. They just got it wrong how it was going to happen, I think. They got ahead of themselves,
Whoa.
Yeah, I mean, the VC,
Well,
they just, clearly some money was pets.com money and just went nowhere and got evaporated.
Right.
But some of it, of course, a lot of the big revolutionary stuff was open source coming from that time.
Yeah, of course. Well,
so they couldn't capitalize on it.
Open source drove the whole thing.
Yes,
right?
that's what they didn't get. I got it.
Apache was the whole thing.
Yep.
But I mean, listen, there's room for both, right?
Because Apache made Web 1.5 possible, where you could do all this add-on stuff, and and use it. You can use Apache as a Swiss Army knife, and it could do 1,000 things.
Yeah.
And all the things that you wanted to do to tie not just one web server, but piles of web servers together.
And Perl was the early language of the internet, of the dynamic internet.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's how I learned web programming, was with Perl.
Right.
Yeah. So great.
Nice.
Great little language.
Right. We've had similar experiences. It's kind of interesting.
I spent many years learning Perl and programming in Perl, and it did the job for sure.
So you do some consulting now, right? Are you available or are you booked?
No, I'm with an employer right now, so
okay.
I'm not looking to do anything like that.
Okay, that's cool. But we'll leave it open for a possibility in the future if that ever came up. I said it, not you. So I know you said you had Amazon certifications and some stuff about Azure and.
Yeah, I kind of took a focus on what was going on with cloud technologies. This has been building for several years, but I was with a company a couple years ago, and I noticed that they were asking developers to become more, software developers to be more conversant in AWS infrastructure and deploying at least their own development environments and maybe more. Mm-hmm. So that's when I knew, this is kind of going to be really relevant for developers. It's not just going to be something that's handled, by the systems guys.
Right.
And I actually recognized it as a disturbing trend on two levels. One, why would you take your developers' focus away from developing features that serve your main mission, mm-hmm. And ask them to start doing infrastructure type of things, right? You're sort of mm-hmm. taking a very valuable resource and now putting them on something that probably should have its own focus.
Call it what it is, on plumbing duty.
Well,
it's true. Adminning is very much like plumbing.
Yeah, exactly.
If you're an administrator and you're setting up multiple machines to talk to each other in a network, 80% of it really is plumbing.
Yeah, and there's nothing derogatory about that, except it's not a company's
wanted to be a plumber.
It's not their value proposition.
Yeah.
So you're taking your developers who are supposed to be adding value to your product, and now you're having them build infrastructure. Right. So I thought it was misguided, but I guess in some management circles they were thinking they were going to leverage developers further or something like that.
Yeah.
And I only took one sip.
Yeah, I know, right? I'm waiting. Hour 3 is going to be spectacular.
I didn't realize there was hardly anything in there. How'd that flow out of there?
That was amazing.
Yeah.
Gravity shifted. All right, the gravity shifting.
Do we have a paper towel handy? Thanks, I appreciate it. It's not a big mess, but I wouldn't mind cleaning it up a little.
Yeah. So.
Where is it?
Oh, just on the armrest here.
Is this enough or you need more?
No, that's perfect. Thanks.
Yeah. I kind of the holy grail is somebody who can do everything, and the reason we want that is because of the automation.
Yeah.
That's so the cloud is really kind of like a misnomer in a way. It's very much like. It's kind of like the hyper automation wave is what when someone says cloud, if they're using it in its purest form, what they're really saying is hyper automated.
Sure. I mean,
is that fair?
Absolutely. I mean, you're probably if you're using it
on the network and hyper automated, is it enough to have it on your? You can't put it on the Raspberry Pi and say it's in the cloud. But if it's remote and hyper automated,
hyper automated, primarily platform as a service, right? Mm-hmm. So cloud started off and got all its traction as infrastructure as a service, mm-hmm. Also with automation and also with infrastructure as code. Mm-hmm. That's where the automation comes in, right? You can now describe all of your hardware using a code base,
Right.
which is what made it interesting to me. Again, going back to my sort of foray into computer engineering and being more of a software guy. When the cloud came along, it now made hardware provisioning a software discipline.
Right.
So it grabbed my interest. It was a natural fit. So it wasn't too much of a stretch once I realized that all the automation that was possible to take a software discipline and start applying it to cloud type of stuff.
Right.
Yeah, so I got my certs. I got both the AWS Pro certs, and then just this year I got the Azure Expert cert, Solutions Architecture. But yeah, with cloud, it's all about the automation, and it's all about the moving capital expenditures into operational expenditures. So you no longer have to have a big outlay.
Right.
In order to,
which is great if you have new ideas. So just so you know what we're talking about, like how much money do you want to have up front?
Right.
Really, and that was always a problem. There was needing a pile of money to get started in IT was always a huge problem. You needed a server room, which means you needed gear, you needed a guy, you needed a network connection, and now you just pay per month. So if your business model is viable, it's viable from month one.
Yeah.
It's a huge benefit for startups.
Yeah, and most things you can provision at the scale you need. Per minute. And you can go up in very small increments.
Yeah, I mean, if your code is good, per minute, per second.
Yeah. Oh yeah, if you go serverless. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, it's I consider it the I've said this often that it's the most impressive platform since the internet itself. I mean, because the internet, when it started out, it was much simpler. But once you had to have all of this sort of enterprise level infrastructure, if you wanted to have a reliable site, it became very much a monetary investment and time and effort. I mean, just the months it would take to provision a new server.
Right.
Months.
Yeah, and a lot of it was toil. A lot of it was this is something you try to get away from in the modern development model. Toil is where you're just doing the same thing over and over and over again, and you're not learning anything new. You're not getting anything new out of it. You're just throwing labor at a problem rather than actually trying to solve it.
Yeah.
So, which was necessary at the time because there was just no other way to do it. The pieces were just not there.
That's how you kept those systems going.
Yep.
But now you can turn it on and you could scale up and scale down.
Right. You just write the right recipe, install a baseline of software, which can also itself be automated, and you're off.
Yeah.
And the great thing about that is, if you make a mistake, the good thing is if you get it right, you get it right really fast. And the bad thing is if you get it wrong really fast.
Yeah.
I mean, you can roll out a mistake to your entire infrastructure, so you need to test.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's very
that
important.
inherent fire breaking by having individual machines. If you had 100 machines and you tested something on one, you broke one machine.
Right.
Now, if you break the recipe, you've broken all the machines.
Right.
Yeah.
That's true. That's true. You got to be careful and you got to know what you're doing.
Right.
Otherwise
You have to be systematic.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Has to be organized.
Otherwise, you end up on the cover of Krebs.
Organized. Yes.
You end up on the cover of Krebs with the ate bucket breach.
Yeah. What, I don't know what you're talking about with that. I mean, I know what a bucket is.
Krebs is a security site.
Oh, okay.
And they report on breaches.
Oh, okay.
Among other things.
Right.
But yeah, so some of the most infamous breaches are just bucket permissions set wrong. A bucket is a.
We just had a talk on last month on Livelog on that, a mini talk on bucket permissions, and I think it was Joe actually.
Okay.
Joe's been on the show before, so we want to look him up. Joe was talking about how just the stupidest people everybody can read it. For everything in every bucket, and it's like that's not even the default. How do you get this wrong?
Yeah, you have to. Well, they probably opened it up for a reason, and they didn't realize they were really opening it up to the whole world.
Right.
And large companies have gotten bitten by this.
Right.
With their production data.
Yeah. Data. I would say that this is the overlooked spot that's been overlooked the entire time, and actually is underserved and is probably going to be. I hope it's going to be a huge growth area, but at least it's going to be a moderate growth area for sure, which is data farming, data stewardship, data care, data organization. You know, it's just like, I mean, some of it can be algorithmic, but you know, you still need someone to oversee the algorithms. You know, and I mean, just data, people just keep, because hard drives have grown the whole time. That's the only thing that has grown the whole time. So the data is completely out of control. It's just huge everywhere you look. And actually, that's a lot of what keeps you in the cloud. You're trapped in there, you know, because the cost of, you know, the cost of going in is free. The cost of getting out is, well, how much data do you got?
Well, I mean, there is a cost to get out, but it can be economical too. If it,
of course.
With AWS, they have things like snowballs where you can get.
If you're organized, it's going to be very economical. If you're not organized, maybe not so much.
Well, it depends on what your data, you know, how, you know, which type of container it's in, right? Is it just object data in buckets, or is it data in a database, or is it, you know?
Right.
It's a migration process, but I think you're less trapped than you've ever been before.
That's true.
Because, you know, especially if you're thinking of not necessarily, you know, harvesting your data and put it on your local hard drive, but if you want to move your data to another data center, you have very good transport between the data centers and the clouds, and you can move, you know, a lot of data very quickly.
Okay. All right. Well, I've used the cloud. I've done work in it, but I have not had to move large data sets. So. I just looked at the pricing and went, ooh, and then I just stopped. So I guess it's better than I imagined. I was being too negative on it.
Well, it's not free, but if you have that much data and it's of value to you, then I think the cost is really.
It's just a little hump in your cost.
I think so. Yeah.
Okay. Interesting.
Yeah. You're not. I wouldn't say you're trapped by any means.
Right.
You have more options today than ever before.
Great. You're doing software development, and you've done software development more or less the whole time during your career. Now, I know you said you worked with Perl when you first started out. What other languages have you been? What's your favorite language?
Well, I've been away from software development for a couple of years, you know, focusing on solution architecting.
It shows you when last time I caught up with you.
No, I mean, I'll tell you, I was and am very keen on C#. I've programmed over the years in Java a fair bit. Perl. I did some kind of early work in C++. But
what do you think of the legal changes in Java? Are you worried about them, or, you know, as a guy with some legal training and a Java aficionado?
So I'm not up on what you're referring to.
So they were the license. It used to be an open source. They used to support the open source version of Java, and now it's completely forked at this point. You know.
Oh, you mean Oracle is
Oracle?
Is kind of taking it in house.
And there's some new license restrictions on Java. So
I mean, I wouldn't characterize that as legal, right? That's a business licensing policy decision.
That's what I meant by
okay.
I mean, I didn't mean to like equating using Java to murder. I just
the feds aren't coming in and shutting down Java, right?
Well, I wonder. So there's a great story about Oracle. There was a drive a truck through it whole, and Oracle had written off. I forget what version of it was. I think it was 1.6 maybe. And Oracle was like, no, we're not going to fix this, because they had warned for years that they weren't going to fix that version anymore, and that was the big version that a lot of embedded devices were using. And so they insisted that no, we're not going to update this, you have to upgrade. And I think they got a call from somebody in the DoD, and they said, you're going to update this.
Right.
Because this exploit's too exploitable, and there's too many devices out there. You're putting us at a national security risk.
Wow.
I mean, this is a conspiracy theory, but there were conversations and some news stories at the time that would back this up. So I was like, I think they just strong-armed them.
I think there's a lot of cooperation going on, you know, between.
Well, a lot of the big tech companies have government offices.
Yeah, they have offices, right?
They have office up the hall. You know, they can just walk up.
I don't even think it's a secret.
Don't do that.
It's not a secret, right? I mean,
I mean, it's not even. They're not hiding it. Maybe you didn't know that, but we knew that.
I don't know. You know, I didn't follow actually what Oracle ended up doing there. But But you're saying that they definitely.
Oh yeah, well in that one case, it was like this really terrible exploit where it was just remote exploitable, root exploitable, take over the machine kind of.
No, I mean as far as taking it, as opposed to forking it and.
Oh, the more recent thing, yeah, there was some new license restrictions, and actually I covered it in an older show. It's been so long since I covered it, I've forgotten the details of the license restrictions, but I did warn people that like, yeah, you got to look at this because it was important.
Yeah.
It was like 2 months ago or 3 months ago.
Was it ever open source?
It was open source for a little while.
Because in the beginning, again, back to in the beginning, Java was just open specification, right?
Right.
And
Yes.
you compete.
It was totally open spec, but not open source at all.
Yeah, you compete on implementation.
And they always kept their own fork of the Java of the Sun license for Java, but they also did an open source. Right, but they also would contribute to open source and cross pollinate and stuff.
Yeah, what was that project called? Like Java.
OpenJDK.
OpenJDK, right?
Yeah. So. And I remember because that particular show, I actually blew the name of OpenJDK and I forgot the name of it, which is dumb. I mean, it's like a core open source component,
right.
you know.
Well, I'm surprised I couldn't remember it either. But
yeah.
I've been away from Java for a little while. But so they're not prohibiting others from writing implementations, are they? In their licensing?
No. So of course that's the funny thing is that now you have the open source version. Now they're competing against the open source version, which has a very strong motivation to keep up.
Yeah.
You know, so I mean, I'm running OpenJDK on some Linux machines and haven't had any problems. I've never had a reason to switch over.
I think Oracle's going to lose on this one.
I think they will too.
I don't think they're
up against the open source reference model. What are they going to add to Java at this point that hasn't already been thought of?
Right, and you know, I mentioned in my notes to your notes. You know, actually, this was my notes before your notes. Actually,
so what you're saying is it's the metadata.
This is my.
Go on.
This was something I mentioned about open source. I don't know if you ever read Eric Raymond's Cathedral in the Bazaar.
I did. Yes, it was an age ago, but I read it. Yes.
Yeah, I mean, one of his key points in that book was that open source is very well placed for infrastructure problems.
Right.
Because it begs for a shared solution, not only shared in contributing to ideas to solve the problem, but shared in making the investments, right? Because it's going to be a shared infrastructure,
right?
And it's not a competitive advantage, right? It's the plumbing. So I think Oracle's crazy to try to take this in-house and own the plumbing.
Yeah, to me,
and they never will.
This is scary at a level like how is someone so high up in the company? This must have been approved by the CEO of Oracle. Even if it was just rubber stamped, he must have passed over his desk. How did you not know enough about open source to not go, hey, wait a minute, is this a good idea?
I don't know what the argument would have been to bring it in-house and own it. I mean, I think. Most of .NET now has been open sourced, I think, right?
Right. Yeah. Well, Microsoft's going crazy with the open sourcing. It's awesome.
Even WPF, their GUI language, their presentation foundation.
Yeah.
They've brought that to core now.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, that was recent. That was in the last couple of months, which surprised me. I thought they would never bring WPF to .NET Core, but they did. So that means for all of these platforms, and I include Linux. I know you're a fan, and I don't think you'll mind me saying this. I think it's always struggled on the desktop, and with some sort of sanity to the GUI.
I've accepted it and even seen it as destiny, but maybe you're going to dissuade me of that right now.
Well, what would you think if Microsoft saves Linux desktop? I mean, it would be crazy, right?
That'd be a nightmare for Apple, who's having their own problems right now. Honestly, their product offerings are not that good. They're losing their boutique status.
I know you've commented on that, and I'll be honest with you. I was a latecomer to Apple. Because I love Apple.
Don't get me wrong. I really do like it, but I think that they're just not doing anything new.
I like it. I don't love it, and I'll tell you my journey to Mac OS and then away from it. I spent years I was neutral on Macs, right? I'm like, oh, it's an interesting thing. The kids like it, and it seems to be catching on.
No, it's crazy kids in there. Macs.
No.
I know.
Listen, this is how I would get my experience on Macs. I'd go to the Apple store and I'd mess around and I'd see if I bumped into a new feature and I said, oh, I'll switch over for this. I'll pay a 50% premium on the hardware in order to get this. Right. And I never ran into that. I'm like, oh, that's interesting, but I'm not going to pay more for that, and I don't think companies are going to pay more for that.
Right.
And then I was recently with a company. and they offered me a Mac. I said, you know what, let me try living this for for a while.
Right.
And I did.
And they were on board with you possibly pulling out later and saying, no, this is crazy, I can't use this.
Yeah, they offered Windows machines also.
Right.
But the company was by and large Macs.
Because I've always run, I did Macs professionally for over a decade, and I always ran them side by side with either Linux and or Windows, because I was like, yeah, I can't depend on this, because I may need to do something that Mac is just not going to allow me. Interestingly, it did happen, but not that often. So I really never, I probably would have survived had it just been Mac. Mm-hmm. So I don't know if that's been your experience, but.
Well, what I learned with Mac is I like that it's a Unix-based operating system, and that's what made me really want to like it. But ultimately, I use a desktop computer for the UI, and I ran into too many inconsistency in the UI metaphors and the way the UI was behaving. To be comfortable. I mean, I kept, like, even tabbing through Windows was a strange experience.
Right.
Because like processes that are minimized, but they're still running, but they don't appear when you
you're a power user, of course, right?
When you command tab, you don't see them. They're like hidden.
Yeah, you're a power user.
So I have to get to them with, I'm like, why is there this inconsistency?
So actually,
and there were other things too, like having to find those little circles with the mouse, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like Windows is smart. They give you big boxes. I slide up there. It's like bam, bam. Whereas with Mac, it's like it's an exercise in precision. I got to get right on the dot.
Right.
So these things when you're doing, when you're a power user and you're doing this all day, you're straining to hit the dot. That adds stress to your day.
Yeah.
So at least it did for me.
Yeah. Well, the thing I found with Mac, my experience with it was that just, I ended up being a power user. You can't survive without shortcut keys. When you learn all the shortcut key combinations, you realize this is the same as Linux and Windows. I can be doing the same thing with the same shortcut keys there. Mm-hmm. There's no advantage to me being here. Yeah. So it's really about your initial experience. That's what Macs are. I don't want to know anything about computers.
Right.
I just want to spend a minute with this and get the most basic thing done, and that's what it's really best at.
Yeah, I agree. I guess that's part of its appeal.
And the cool thing about OS X is, in the background, if you're working, a person who's like us, who's a power user, and a minimalist user, can work side by side on the same platform. That's the appeal, I think. But if Windows gets, is the one to bring Linux desktop to the forefront, I mean, Windows backend is way better than OS X backend. Especially a combination of Windows and Linux together is a way better backend than an OS X backend.
Oh yeah, what they're doing now.
Just huge advantages. And the thing that Microsoft's always been great at is giving you tons of options in an iterative fashion, as opposed to the narrative with Linux.
That's another thing. Everyone thinks that Steve Jobs and Apple's their friend, right? But it's a completely closed ecosystem, right?
Right. Yeah.
Right? Windows at least has always been about opening up the platform for competition.
Right.
And they've done that at the driver level, with the peripherals and the devices, and they've done. Listen, I'm not an apologist for Microsoft, right? I mean,
how dare you?
They have.
I'm really embarrassed about how much I've been blowing smoke up Microsoft's ass on the show lately, because they've done a lot of great things. They've open sourced a ton of stuff, and I can't say no to that. I mean, it's great. It's really good. So,
and it's
good for them.
It's been good for their business.
I mean, they haven't even screwed Minecraft up. I've been waiting for it. I've been waiting for oh God, no!
Right, don't break it.
It's pretty good. Oh, turtles are so cute.
Like the PC platform and Xbox. I mean, those are major gaming platforms.
Yeah.
They know how to do gaming.
Yeah, they know how to do game. Well, the Xbox. I mean, they said so when they started it. It was a ploy to take over the media market. They didn't want to be Sony. They wanted to be Apple.
Right.
They wanted to have all the music flowing through. Of course, then they shit can Zune and But Xbox was too big to shit can, and they don't have ships passing in the night.
Yeah.
It's like one arm of Microsoft doesn't talk to the other one. But until they open source stuff, and then they can, right? Then the employees can avoid the management, manage up, and fix the crap so it actually works together. And you're like, well, this is a coherent platform.
Yeah. Well, with the exit of Balmer, I think a lot of people say the culture has gotten a lot better.
Right.
Because I never say the new CEO's last name, Satanyala. Am I saying that right?
Yes, sounds right.
Yeah, I mean he changed the whole culture, and he put the focus on being cross-platform and focusing on Azure and this whole future universe of open source and cross-platform.
I'd love to see Azure grow to be meaningful, like the same, at least the same order of magnitude as AWS. I'd love that. AWS has no competition right now.
No, Azure's competition.
Oh, you think so?
Yeah, they're there. I mean, I don't know if they have as many data centers in as many regions, but they offer certainly their own
feature to feature.
They have feature parity for sure.
Okay, cool.
So, in some places they excel. A lot of companies pick Azure for different security features.
Now you're making me want to, because I've done AWS, but I haven't really done Azure. Now
I'm not as immersed in Azure. I did get the cert, which made me spend a lot of time with it. And
how hard was that? Was it very difficult, or was it?
The tests are hard.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Were they unreasonable, or were they just hard?
Well, I'll tell you, the AWS certs are much better.
Okay.
I can tell you in like 2 minutes the types of questions on an AWS exam. There's multiple choice and multiple answer, and that's it. You take an
But if you pass it, you still shows you have a knowledge level, right?
Oh yeah, no, they're very good exams. Because of the way they ask the questions, the problem sets.
If I'm unwilling to accept toil on my cloud platform, I'm not going to be willing to accept it on my tests either, on my certification tests, right? Because I mean, it's inherently like you just qualified yourself out. Like we don't even understand this market and how it works.
Well, it's a little crazy, to be honest with you, with what they got going on with the Azure tests, right? So I tell you, there's two types of questions on an AWS test: multiple choice, right? Pick the one that's right, or multiple answer, pick the 3 that apply, or what have you. On a Azure test, they have all these different mechanisms for answering the question. There's like list them in this order, multiple choice, multiple answer, lab questions, and cross the match these with the it's like there's like 12 different types of questions.
It sounds like mid-level Cisco stuff.
I don't know.
Yeah, that's how mid-level Cisco is. The lower Cisco stuff tends to be, actually even lower, even CCNA is like that. It has different methods. But honestly, I agree with you. I think that sucks.
They're not testing your knowledge. They're testing your ability to
withstand torture,
navigate their test.
Withstand torture.
Yeah. It's crazy. It's crazy.
Yeah.
You slide the box around. It's crazy. Anyway.
Right.
I think AWS exams they're very good because they're problem set oriented, and you have to they're both very hard. All 3 of them are hard tests. Both the DevOps professional and the solutions architect professional on the AWS side, and the Azure expert. They're not joke tests. I mean, you got to know what you're doing.
So, what was the hardest sell for have you ever open sourced any of the products you've done for customers? Have you ever been able to sell that to any of your customers? Like, you really want this open source because then you don't have to depend on me, or did you always go closed source and just use open source products in conjunction with it?
My experience has been primarily leveraging open source, and the stuff we were building was business specific. So, open sourcing it might not have made much sense, because it was business logic, right? A lot of the work I did was business logic type of work.
Right. Per company, per situation.
Yeah.
Per their pipeline, and it wouldn't really make sense for anyone else.
Yeah.
Okay, I got it.
There was.
It's hard to abstract that stuff into a more general case.
It is,
which is kind of like where all our business comes from.
It's specific business. I mean, it's specific to the business.
Yeah, like we have a business model that's not quite like anyone else's because we think this gives us an advantage, and write software to match it. And you're like, okay, well, I can't use this anywhere else, so.
Well, that's where
makes you a better programmer, but
that's where the differentiation comes in, right? They've designed the UI. I mean, I don't know if you've been looking at refinancing lately with the low interest rates, but you go to all these different sites.
You're reading my cheat sheet, aren't you? That's the next topic.
Is it?
Yeah. Economics is the next topic.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, you go to all these different sites, and the mortgage product is what it is, right? But you go to these different sites, you have a totally different experience. Mm-hmm. Some companies are more upfront with the information, and some are less. Some have a very good UI. Mm-hmm. Some have a very poor one. Mm-hmm. Some have. Like I said, it's just the ones that have good UI, they're very transparent.
And this little mortgage bank went, wee, 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 wee. me all the way home.
Right, exactly.
It's true though.
But they're all selling the same thing. It's like
Yeah, it's the same case
a
over and
highly
over and over.
regulated product, right? I mean, but they're
Right.
trying to put their own twist on it,
Nice.
and some succeed and some don't.
Yeah. So I was actually. Well, I wanted to. I guess we could go into mortgage and come back to economics because mortgages are interesting, and maybe that's actually a better flow anyway.
Okay.
So it's funny. So Bill gave me a list of things he wanted to talk about, and he gave it to me, and I actually turned it into a list, and then ordered it in the order I thought the conversation would flow. And I've been pretty close, but I was a little off. So instead of economics being next, it would be mortgages.
All right.
Yeah.
Sounds
So actually, I wanted to tell a story about myself because I'm totally into economics also, and I have been into mortgages mainly because in the .com days, I knew a guy that was one of the guys that I was working with was investing heavily in property. He's like, you got to invest in property. And I'm like, that's crazy. I don't even have any money right now. How would I do that? He's like, anybody can get a loan. Don't worry about it.
Right.
And actually, of course, he was completely dead bang on right. And I should have tried to buy a home then, even though I didn't have anyone to share it with, right? And just lived in an empty house because the prices went through the roof and totally skyrocketed and completely locked me out by like 2004, 2005 when I was married and ready to have a kid.
Right.
And I'm like, uh-oh.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So I'm in an apartment with a baby, and I'm like, this sucks. I should have listened. And then I'm really digging into it now. I saw the error of my ways, and I'm like, okay, now I understand where I was wrong in the interest rate schedule and like figuring out the prime rate and how that affects all the mortgage rates. And I'm like, let me see if I can figure out how to time this. And I came up with a group of criteria, and I nailed it to the month. I actually bought my house at the bottom of the housing market after the crash. So I knew the crash was coming, and I nailed my neighborhood to the month. Because every neighborhood had a different month, right? But it was all around the end of 2008, throughout 2009, like that one year.
Right.
And I nailed it, man. I was like, yeah!
Good for you.
Yeah, it was, so I know it. The point I'm trying to make is I can actually have this. You were a little worried that I was like not going to know anything about it. I'm like, what are you talking about mortgages for? I love economics.
No,
I mean, if you don't understand economy of scale, if you don't understand interest rates, if you don't understand contract law, you're never going to know what the hell's going on in computers. So even if you're just a pure technocrat, you got to at least have a finger in this stuff, man.
Yeah.
And forget it if you want to actually get into like the higher end positions in a business. Eventually, property management becomes an issue.
Right.
You can't ignore it anymore. So. So tell me about what you think about mortgages and where we are and what's happening.
Yeah. Well, we kind of are where we've always been, right? We're in an economy, a housing market, where mortgages are actually, or at least 30-year mortgages, I think, are a detriment to the market. And most people are going to be surprised to hear my.
Wait. What do you think about 40-year mortgages?
I think they sound worse than 30-year mortgages.
I was on an economics board, and when the bank started suggesting 40-year mortgages, they're just like, what the f is wrong with you people? That's the problem.
Well, who's suggesting it? Banks, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Funny that. Continue. Would you like some more?
No.
Okay.
No, not right now. Thank you, though.
Okay.
Listen, I recognized, and I don't think anyone grows up and says, yeah, I can't wait to get locked into a 30-year mortgage. Right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's something you kind of.
Mortgages. The root of mortgage is French, and it means until you die.
But yeah, it's engagement till death.
Engagement till death. That's literally what mortgage means. Mortgage.
Yeah. I'm surprised you do that.
Yep. I told you I know this stuff, man. Till you die, mofo.
Engagement till death.
Yep.
Yeah. And that's the root of it.
You're more married to your bank than you are your spouse.
Yeah, it comes out of a feudal system, actually. As does all property ownership, really. So that kind of tells you what we're rooted in. But listen, I'm not over the top on this stuff. I just believe, and I have reason to believe, that the 30-year mortgage actually distorts the market, right? and people, it was originally considered a mechanism for improving access to housing. Now it actually acts to reduce choice and reduce options. And the way we're going, the way it's going to work out is renting will always seem more attractive than owning, and we're going to lose the home ownership estate, right? I put that on par with, or I should say the home ownership franchise, right? I put that on par with the way farmers lost the farm franchise at the end of the 19th century, early 20th century, right? People moved from the farms to the factories. And, you know, I remember reading a story about you know, a farmer who had to finance his tractor, right? And then one bad year, and what do you know? The bank shows up, repossesses the tractor. Now he doesn't have a farm or a tractor.
Right.
You know, so you know
He's out in the barn trying to beat the swords and the plows so he can use his ox. Yeah, that's not going to work.
yeah. So I mean, that's a long way of saying. So what's happening is, you know, renting will actually become more fiscally attractive than ownership, but you won't have the other benefits of ownership, right? Which is control over your housing and the ability to one day, you know, taxes aside, own a home that you can live in, right?
You won't be able to build turrets, no gator moat, you know.
Right.
No, just kidding. I don't have a gator
keep
moat.
your stockpile. I mean,
Yeah.
but so
Or to put a fan in the damn bathroom without asking permission, right? Because that's what you have to do with a landlord.
right.
You know, like,
Right. Or
you know,
who's gonna?
I have smelly farts. Do I really need to codify this? Can I just put a fan in? You know, come on, really?
And who's going to invest in a rental property, right? So you then get deterioration in the neighborhoods. But this is where the economic model is leading.
Right. Well, there's some truth. There's some
it's-
economic models to back that up.
Right,
Like
it's already
broken
happening.
windows theory. You know what I'm saying? Like, you know,
okay.
like as far as deterioration of neighborhoods, you start letting you know, as houses start to fall apart, it actually brings the whole neighborhood down. You know, and a little bit here and a little bit there is okay, but as it piles up, it hits some inflection point, and all of a sudden people start leaving. You know.
Yeah.
And of course, why does that happen? Well, if people don't have any investment in the properties, the landlords have a disincentive typically to, you know, to fix the place up, you know, until it's time to rent it again to a new person, and so they get locked into this, you know, who can slum more than the other guy, you know, between landlord and tenant.
a little bit of a race to the bottom, right?
A race to the bottom between the landlord and tenant, and you know, and that's homeownership is critical to having nice to live in neighborhoods.
Yeah, stable neighborhoods, right? That's
You know,
the other thing.
you can't be for NIMBY and not be for home ownership. You're crazy. You're not even thinking it through then.
Right, and you get more transient residents, right? No one's vested in the neighborhood, so who's going to stick it out and make it better, right?
Right.
Well, so you know, and those are kind of, you know, you could say those are kind of like the soft things, but they're real. I think
soft things pile up.
Yeah, but I think most people recognize that these are real things. But really, what's driving this is, I believe, the inflationary effect of the 30-year mortgage, right? So, you know, maybe back in the 1970s, although it was already starting to happen, but certainly now, right? This is an iterative game, right? This isn't a one-shot game, and you can see this happening with car ownership, right? Young people don't want to own a car; they'd rather just Uber rather than take on the expense and responsibility of owning a car, because they kind of figure economically it makes sense and they can get around well enough with an Uber, and you know maybe car ownership is not as essential as home ownership, or doesn't have all the negative consequences of not owning a car, right? Maybe you do get rid of a maintenance headache and a maintenance burden, but with home ownership, it's different. It's where you live. It's the quality of your neighborhood, right? So there's all these other factors, and you're seeing the same effect from what I attribute to the 30-year mortgage, as with, for example, what you've seen very dramatically with student loans and lending in that area, right? There it's happened more dramatically and more quickly because the supplier of college education is much more concentrated, so there's not as much competition on the supply side. But you see the same thing in housing. You step into the housing market in 20.
Give big loans, get bad service.
Right. Well, it's not even about the service.
So big is relative, of course.
It's not even about the service.
Yeah.
You're walking into a market where the price of housing has been already inflated. Right? So as a new entry, you have no choice. You're walking into an inflated market. You can't get a good deal.
Yeah. I mean, this isn't just some abstract thing.
Right.
Like if you're,
No, this is.
a lot of our viewers some of our viewers are from New York for sure, but some of them may not be from New York. New York is terrible right now. I mean, I was very lucky. I was good, but I was also lucky that I was in a position to nail the bottom of the housing market when my wife was pregnant with my second kid.
Yeah, but listen.
The gun was up against my head. I mean, if I hadn't nailed it to the month, I never would have even gotten in.
But listen to what
people are locked out.
Listen to what you're saying.
Yeah.
You had to benefit at the expense of an entire market collapse. Think of all the damage that was done.
Oh
by that collapse,
I took some
right?
banker's house for sure.
Yeah.
I mean, not literally, but it was. Yeah,
Right.
if the pool of the market, a lot of them were
Right.
banker houses. A lot of it was Lehman people.
But if you did well, which is great. I'm happy for you.
But dumb luck.
But this is not a way to organize a society.
Yeah.
Right? And I didn't plan this. I couldn't have planned this. Right? I just came across this headline today. Right? Because these headlines are coming out every day. Seniors facing eviction fear homelessness and isolation as California's housing crisis rolls on.
Right.
This is in America in 2019. That's a headline. I couldn't have planned that. You know, we were coming today, but that headline just appeared today.
Yeah. Thursday's a great headline day, by the way. It's very beneficial to the show. Yeah. They actually, it has to do with the news cycle. I don't want to mess up your flow, but it has to do with the news. So that's one of the reasons I have such great stories that maybe you haven't heard on the show, because a lot of the great news stories come out Thursday because everybody wants to hit the news with their story on Thursday. You know, whether the journalists or companies are doing PR or whatever, because it lasts the weekend. You get the weekend in the news cycle, so you get a 3-day news cycle instead of a 2-day news cycle.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
brilliant.
That's the key.
Oh, good to know.
Not a coincidence, probably.
Yeah. Well, those headlines are unfortunately,
But yeah, it's probably within the past week. That's accurate.
So my point being, your good fortune was during a time of incredible turmoil.
Yes.
And a lot of people were devastated.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
So that's.
Sure. Thanks. Appreciate it.
That's not how we should structure a market like a housing market, right?
No.
Like there's 3 basic needs.
A terrible lottery.
Food, exactly. Food, clothing, shelter, right? So we're doing pretty good with food and clothing, right? But there's so many people with housing insecurity, and my point with the mortgage is it inflates this market, right? The pricing is outrageous. So, I'm actually working on getting an organization off the ground called Unscrew.io.
Oh,
right?
great.
So it's the idea is to kind of undo a little bit of the damage that's been done.
So what is that Unscrewed.io?
No, I'm all right, thank you.
Unscrewed.io, what is it trying to do? What is it?
It's at its heart, right? The long game is to turn debtors into investors.
Oh.
Okay. So there's different mechanisms for getting there.
Okay.
But one of the linchpins is this idea that if you remove, and this is well understood by investors and stock traders. This isn't like a novel concept, right? When you introduce lending, you introduce leverage into a market. So right now, the entire housing market in the United States is over-leveraged due to what I attribute to a 30-year mortgage, right?
Right.
If you reduced the allowable term on a mortgage for a certain segment of the market, basically the non-luxury primary residence market, to 20 years, you remove all that cash from the market, so prices will come down, right?
I killed myself to try to find a 15-year mortgage, but I couldn't do it.
Because the prices are too high.
Because the prices are too high.
That's because they're inflated by the 30-year mortgage.
Right. Yeah, because
you see what's happening here?
We've subsidized the market into a complete insanity.
I wouldn't call it subsidized, but we've leveraged it.
Yeah. Well, leverage. The banks have leveraged it. I mean, some of it does come back to the policies that are set by the Federal Reserve and by the government.
By setting
the prime rate, which in turn, Yeah, and also the insurance companies, also legal regulations on the insurance companies and the insurance companies that back the mortgages.
Interest rates are a factor, but you know, one of the primary components for obtaining a mortgage is your debt to income ratio, right?
Right.
And they determine that based upon, you know, whether you're going to be able to make the payment each month. And if they can stretch out the payment over 30 years instead of 20 years, they're going to be able to give you a larger sum of money because you'll have a smaller payment each month.
Right.
But you know what that does to the interest you're going to pay over the life of that loan.
Oh, of course,
I mean, the curve goes zip.
So I was very lucky, and again, one of the reasons I knew about this is because I had great training when I was young, but we don't teach people about this in school. We don't teach people about interest rates at all and compound interest.
Right.
I mean, they cover it, but they don't really, in my opinion, it's not enough of the curriculum.
Yeah.
If the majority of students aren't coming out of there getting it, I mean, so, you know, some of this is education for sure. You know, schools have got to really teach kids, don't get into debt, you know, don't get into, and you have to be, the problem is that people, when they enter the mortgage, they've used every cent that they can put together to make the biggest down payment they can just to get the mortgage.
Yeah.
And of course, if you just make a few early payments early in the mortgage, it takes $100,000 off of your debt.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, some of the numbers I have on the website, right, on unscrewed.io, is, yeah, I lay out scenarios, right? I lay out scenarios where you look at, you know, so this $300,000 mortgage, which is the status quo, right? So you get a certain level of house for $300,000, right? And forget, on Long Island, double these numbers, right?
Right.
So I'm just sort of a nationwide perspective.
Right. You're just going by the mean maximum non-jumbo loan. And the prices across the country.
Yeah.
Which usually doesn't apply here. Almost everybody in New York has to do jumbo loans.
More pricing across the country because $300,000 is more of a typical home price. Whereas on Long Island, $300,000, you know, you don't want to live there.
Right. Yeah. Or
I don't mean to be like that.
No. But it's absolutely true. And it lowers your quality of life because you have. You know, and it's fine if you work in 110 and you live in mid-Suffolk. If you live in mid-Suffolk and you commute in the city, your life is hell. You know, so, and that's about where the $300,000 house range is.
Yeah. I mean, you know, what can I say? I mean,
I know I applied something specific.
Everything on Long Island is more or less double, right?
Right. Well, we're on an island. You can't. It's not like you can swim as part of your commute. Right?
Well, but my point is these numbers apply equally, right?
Yeah.
Because what I've done with the analysis is I've taken the status quo, right, where we have a hyper leveraged market with 30-year mortgages dominant, right? And you know, I imagine so in that scenario, you're going to end up spending about $577,000 over the course. Well, actually, you're going to lose $577,000 over the course of owning that home, right? So it's
where does it go?
Well, it goes to what I call the true cost of the home, right? So there are multiple components to the cost of the home that you know.
Oh yeah, you have a breakdown on the website, don't you?
Yeah. I talk about so the cost of the home goes to the land, the labor to build the home, right? So on a $300,000 home, I put the land at about 17%, $50,000. Labor about $100,000. If you look at your insurance policy, you know what it's going to cost you to rebuild the home on your existing land if you had a fire or something like that. You know, on a $300,000 home, it's going to be somewhere around $100,000, and then $50,000 for materials. So it's $150,000 to rebuild the home. Then there's interest and fees, which I put at $10K when you're first buying the house. Now, I then put market distortion at about 30% of the value of the home. And this is the effect of having a 30-year mortgage available because of the leverage it introduces into the marketplace. So if people didn't have that kind of leverage, they wouldn't be able to get the large loans, and it wouldn't prop up the prices higher. And then if you play those numbers out over the 30 years of the mortgage, right? Your initial land cost was still $50K, your labor was $100K, your materials were $50K, but your interest and fees, right? On day one it was $10K, just basically your closing cost, right? But by the end of it, you've paid $289,000 in
So
interest and fees.
289,000 of the 577,000, half basically, a little less than half is interest.
Yeah.
That's crazy. And that's
Yeah.
all because of the 30-year mortgage is the popular mortgage.
Well, it's because the value of the house was put at $300,000. Right.
Okay.
And you have to,
Which is
you
an
have to-
effect of
you have to
having all that
finance
money
that.
available for free.
Right. You see
essentially.
how it's feeding itself?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's self-referential, so
Yeah.
it's almost like recursion in computers, where you can write a program or a script that will call itself, and then you'll have thousands of those scripts. An analogy for someone who's maybe not into computers would be Fantasia, where Mickey Mouse just cuts a broom in half, and then it splits into two, and it splits into two, and next thing you know, the entire castle is flooded with water from all the brooms bringing the water in because the wizard things got away from him. Yeah. I mean, it's magic, but this is how computers and money work sometimes. It's almost like magic.
Right. So the point is that the leverage is propping up the prices, and the prices are creating an exorbitant cost that has to be financed.
Right.
Right. So if you remove the leverage, you'd lower prices.
Right.
That's the bottom line.
Yeah.
And it's a fact. I mean, this isn't controversial, right? This is how it works in trading, right?
Yeah.
If you want to do leveraged purchases of securities, you can do that. You're going to have to pay insurance and pay fees to get that kind of leverage, but.
And the point I was making about the Federal Reserve before is and this is, I'm not being critical of them. I understand they have a very complex mission. That's the problem. They have a really complex mission.
Yeah.
They have to do 1,000 things with their one tool, which is the prime rate, right?
Yeah.
They can't fix this with the prime rate. You have to add another tool, and that's what you're proposing here.
Yeah, that's what I'm proposing. Because if I continue with the analysis, right? So that status quo where you lose 577,000 through opportunity cost and paying interest and fees and the rest of it, that's sort of like the okay scenario, right? Now you move into a scenario where the market collapses, like happened in 2008, 2009, right? We're heading for another one because this is not sustainable. Right. That's why
it's all based on income. It has to be based on income.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's why my house has gotten to the same value it was 10 years ago. So I've gone basically sideways over the last 10 years. Well, first I went down and then I went up, but essentially sideways. And it'll never go higher. I don't have any hopes it'll go higher because the incomes won't support it. Who's going to pay more?
Right.
There's no more payers. In fact, it's going the other way.
Right.
Wages are under stress. So prices are going to go down.
So one thing that you haven't mentioned here, and that is a problem, is the generational size. So in case you haven't ever seen this before, we kind of have three generations in play right now, and you kind of have the Xers, and you have the millennials, right? And then you have the next generation down underneath there, and this is the boomers. So this is the mushroom. This is the generational mushroom.
Well, the millenniums, I think, are as big as the boomers, right?
No, they're not.
They're not?
So
I thought
so
they
this
were.
is the problem is the boomers are bigger than everybody else too.
Okay.
So one of the effects of this mushroom is that the boomers have pushed the prices up really, really high, and one of the mechanisms they do it is through that. So there will be some relief coming, but I would also counter argument that I don't know when it's going to happen because they may not give up their homes till they die. Unlike Long Island where taxes are super expensive.
I think you're mistaken about the size of the millennial bubble. I heard they're as big as the boomers.
Yeah, no, okay.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't. Yeah.
Yeah,
Get a
I'm
fact check on that.
Yeah. How big? Steve, I'm sorry to bug you. How big are the boomers compared to the Xers and the millennials?
I'm actually on it.
Okay, cool. He's
right,
on
cool.
it. Yeah.
Well.
I might be wrong, so we'll see.
But even at that, the financial structure is still going to be in place, right? You're still going to have a 30-year mortgage, and all the prices are going to be leveraged.
Right.
So I actually did address it somewhat with what I said at the beginning, right? Someone entering the market today is entering a leveraged market. They don't have a choice, and they don't have a chance.
Right.
It's going to cost them more
Right.
than when someone entered the market, during the dip.
Right. So for just to give you an example, this X has almost completely had to take their bite out of the boomers. So like
So right now we're at 73 million millennials and 73 million boomers, and
Wow.
X is about 66 million.
all right, so you're right.
All right.
All right, the millennials caught up finally. I was wrong, so we got to redraw this. No, yeah, good
it's
call, Bill.
Actually, I thought the boomers and the millennials far exceeded the Xers. I didn't realize it was as close as it is, but
Yeah, so it's more like this.
yeah.
Like with a, get that. We have, it's kind of like a sandwich now.
Yeah.
It's an X sandwich.
That's right.
It's you got the bun and the and the
That's
X is in
right.
the middle.
That's right.
So, but still, this is, I mean, what I was telling you about my good experience with buying a house, it was not a good experience for a decade. And it's still a terrible experience because I'm the only one who did it. All my friends are screwed.
Yeah.
They had to buy at inflated prices. I mean, basically, if your timing wasn't perfect, if you weren't good at the carnival game,
Right.
you lost. And so when the boomers retire, there'll be an inherent crash from this because the X's are smaller. Now the millennials, actually, it may not be as bad as I thought because the millennials are bigger than I thought. So, but it still will be a factor.
Well,
So there is. I'm backing up you saying that there's a crash coming.
The millennials are going to be 50 years old before they can start owning a home.
Right. Well, that's really important because we're
course
not going to have
important.
we're not going to have any kids.
Right.
We're done.
And it's ruining their lives.
It's ruining their lives.
They can't start their lives.
Right.
This is a very real problem.
They're de facto incels, even if they're married and want kids.
Right.
Yeah, because they can't. Incel is a male who can't find
Voluntarily celibate.
involuntarily celibate because of the demographics. Because there's not enough females to hook up with. But the incels have a terrible effect on a population. There's just you want a revolution. Incels, instant revolution, because men get angry. They're like, I can't find a woman.
Yeah.
It sounds ridiculous. Because of course, at any given day, oh come on, you joke with your friends at the bar. Over a lifetime, it's a nightmare. It's real.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
So like from so unscrewed.io from the could you explain it from like the insurance perspective, like an insurance company's perspective? Why would they want to support this?
Well,
Like the reinsurers or the guys doing you have two different kinds of insurance, right? You have the insurance like your house burns down, and you have the mortgage insurance like I'm not going to pay my mortgage off. Some people fall off in the first 7 years, which of course there'd be less of that if the price was lower, because the payments would be lower.
right. Well, in the case of insurance companies, actually, they do well under this system too, right? Because they then have to sell premiums to insure a higher cost dwelling or home.
Mm-hmm.
The people that might get on board with this that currently have a vested interest in the way things are structured currently are maybe some banks or financial services providers. They could see their way if they were open-minded and forward-looking to embracing the vision where they're actively participating in help converting debtors into investors, and advancing policies that would do that.
So how does a debtor become an investor in this system?
Well, in what I would propose, right? You have to do two things. You have to, I call it an orderly unwinding, right? So let's get ahead of this. Let's avoid a market collapse like we had in 2008, 2009.
Which is probably going to happen when the last of these boomers retire, which is going to be in another 6 years. That's pretty much when they're all done. Yeah, so 2025 or so.
Yeah,
that's it. It's over.
Yeah, right. When the market can't sustain this any longer, right? 'Cause the incomes aren't there, and people just get tired of paying, right?
Yeah.
What someone in those industries might say is, I want to get on board with this whole idea of turning debtors into investors, right? Mm-hmm. But you have to protect current stakeholders, right? You don't want to devastate current property owners, right? These are the people that have invested in our neighborhoods and our communities. Mm-hmm. We want to actually reward them. So you would get behind the policy where the government is actually offering cash in order to liberate part of the equity in these homes, while simultaneously also putting a restriction on 30-year mortgages, right? So if you're going to remove the leverage from the market, you need to protect the current participants in the market by giving them a cash back, basically
Right.
cash back through some mechanism, and that could be debated.
Right.
And you do that, it would basically, it's not.
So you're gonna compensate people for their loss due to the change in policy.
Exactly.
Right, but then,
it's almost a taking, but I wouldn't quite describe it that way.
And then what do they say? They have a pile of money. Now, do they have to invest this money, or can they just spend it on Vegas?
They could do whatever they want with the money.
Right. So it could be Vegas money, but they also could invest.
Or it could be structured where, maybe there's strings on the money, right? You have to.
Because I could throw a great party for $300,000. I mean, all joking aside, there are people like that.
Yeah,
especially if they're close to retirement, they'd be like, "Screw it, let's party,"
Well, you know what? Let people do what they want with their money, right? My point is, if we don't take a proactive approach on this, I mean, listen, I'm going to be promoting the same thing whether the market collapses or not, because there's things you could do after a market collapse to remedy the situation also, right?
Right.
So now the values have evaporated, right?
Right. The damage isn't all instantaneous. It happens over time.
It happens over time. So you could still kind of inject cash into property owners. It's better if you do it before the collapse than after.
So people say, "Oh man, Bill was right. We better get on this."
You could do that.
Yeah. Hopefully that isn't how it goes, but
right. It's better if we don't. It's better if we get ahead of this, because if you look at the numbers on my website, these are real numbers, right? This factors in. So, for example, if you get all the way to the scenario where you've now removed leverage from the market, right? So that $300,000 house is now $200,000. The owner was given $100,000 cash back, through a government program. Now a new homeowner coming into that house can get a 15-year mortgage, right? Because it's $100,000 less on the cost of the house.
Right.
So what you have there is you've now taken the same house, what would have been a $577,000 net loss due to interest and other lost opportunity costs, including that 10 years that you will now get back to make other investments at the end. You now turn that into a $353,000 net gain. And when you compare that to the status quo, you add the 353 to the 577, and you're up at around $930,000 net gain over 30 years.
Wow.
These are real numbers on
millionaires just appearing out of nowhere. And contributing to the economy and to the markets.
The opposite is happening right now.
Well,
this is real. These aren't made up numbers.
That sounds great, and so I'm going to give you the banker's perspective on this. I'm going to put my banker bow tie on.
Okay.
So, well, tell me, why exactly should we give up all that wonderful interest money? What's in it for us if this happens?
Well, what I would say is to a forward-looking banker, they can turn these people that have money to manage now into customers for financial services and financial products. So you've now turned all of these debtors into investors,
right?
Which is and I think that's the goal of many people, if not everyone, to have a shared prosperity.
So they're losing out on the interest, but they're gaining the same customers are being brought in as potential investors for the future, and now they're investing that money that they lost on interest.
Yeah. And
so they're making fees on the investment.
Listen, if you're the bank that opts to tackle this market and join this initiative, you're going to be ahead of the competition.
And you can be first movers. So
you're going to be first movers.
Right.
That's the hook, if from the banker's perspective.
Yes, I like that hook. Yes, I guess it's inevitable, isn't it? Yes.
Well, listen, if this catches on,
right?
It's assuming that the political will can be established, this is absolutely workable.
Right.
It's working the other way right now.
So
why do you think we have all of this concentration of wealth?
Right.
It's because this is already happening.
Well, for sure, this is definitely part of the problem.
Yeah.
And
it's not.
Some of it is corporate pay. for sure, and golden parachutes, but also some of it is just people just being buried under mountains of debt, not even because of the decisions they made, but because of decisions that other people considered reasonable long ago. I mean, some of these decisions were made in the 60s.
Exactly. That's why.
And we're still in the system. We're still trapped and still snowballing.
That's why. That's why I've picked this as my my passion and my initiative. Right. You don't get into the politics of college loans and should we be helping college kids pay back their loans. You don't get into the politics of. You don't get into the politics, right? That's why my website is purple, right? It's like red and blue.
Yeah. Oh, nice. I didn't catch that. That's pretty good.
Yeah. So this is what the website looks like, by the way.
I'm probably purple.
I don't know if that's coming up there, Stephen.
Yep. Yeah. We got a thumbs up.
All right.
Cool. People can always pause it. Yeah, so like what can people like drop you an email? Do you have a mailing list or something? How can people be part of this? So this seems almost like it's like a move for civic action. Like, how do they become part of this action?
It is. They should.
I mean, I'm really glad you're doing something because most people are just like, drool. They're just like, everything sucks, man, and then that's all you get. That's the whole thing.
Well,
I mean, even in like highly educated areas like New York City, I mean, not all of New York City is, but a lot of it is, and there's a lot of experience and intelligence and income, depending on what you measure success by.
Sure.
And there's all these people, and everyone's just like, drool.
Well, thank you.
Drool.
It's been something that's been on my mind for a long time, and I think we see the problems compounding, to use a financial term, with student loans, income
compounding.
Right. With student loans and income disparities and all this question of retirees being thrown out of their housing.
And that's a huge. It's growing nationally. It's happening faster and faster now too.
This is.
I mean, there's 10 cities in.
There's 10 cities, exactly. You read my mind.
A lot of people are like, oh, that's just San Francisco.
Right.
No, actually, it's Austin now too. It's happening in more and more cities. You're getting a lot more. New York's has got some really strict ordinances, so we haven't seen it yet. But homelessness is up here too.
Yeah, this is the United States of America.
Yeah, it's the whole damn country. This is the
best we can do. I mean, come on, really?
Yeah, it doesn't seem like it's something a superpower would do.
Yeah, I don't care what your political persuasion is. You can't look me in the face and say this is the best we can do, right?
Yeah.
I mean, come on.
Well, we threw people overboard. That's the problem.
We're better than that. We're better than that.
Yeah, I think we are.
And you have to get up every day and believe that. And if you don't, then
right. Well, I mean, if I didn't, I probably wouldn't come in here.
Yeah.
Like if you come here and it's nobody here, and like nobody's explaining why I'm not here, and it's just like they're just filming the wall in the background for 3 hours, and I never walk in, then I've given up. But until then, I'll be here.
All right.
Yeah. All right, this is great. So people should go to your website to check this out,
They go to the website and they can talk about the different benefits of getting involved earlier. So right now. And this is still being developed, but right now we're asking for $250 if you want to be a founding member.
Right.
And among some of it, let me just.
And this is like a Revlon-esque pyramid scheme, right? Where if you get more people to sign up, then you get a cut of their $250. No, I'm kidding. It's a joke. No, it's nothing like that, right?
It's kind of a. Listen, it's both a crowdfunding type of initiative.
It's a crowdfunding,
as well as a market test, right?
Right.
So the idea is you gotta get enough people.
Have you thought about just doing a straight Kickstarter or something like that?
I thought about it. Kickstarter has rules around it. Has to be sort of a product, or at least they used to. They might have given up with all the competition.
Right.
But I thought about doing something like that.
Yeah.
But really, it's more about getting the marketing message straight and figuring out a way to communicate this to people.
Right.
That connects. Right.
Yeah.
Because it's these.
You're team building right now.
Yeah. Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly. But. If someone did want to check out the website, the first stab at this is a $250 lifetime membership, and with that you become a founding member, and in addition to some of the other benefits, this is sort of the advocacy arm of what we're trying to do, but you'll also see reference on the website a URL called feerebel.com, which would be all about providing products and services to help consumers identify fees in major purchases like retirement products, auto loans, and mortgages.
So I have a question for you. I didn't get a chance to ask. We did talk about this a little bit ahead of time, so I had some idea what I was getting into. But I'm a little confused about this one. I forgot to ask you. What is the advantage of just having a good lawyer? Like if you have if you have a good home, if you have a good housing lawyer, right, when you buy a house, theoretically he or she should be able to help you navigate through some of those fees, right?
Yeah, but often they won't. They won't opine on the fees.
Right.
They'll make sure that
they just want it to go quickly and smoothly rubber stamp it, get out of there, and go to the next one.
No, they're primarily interested in title being transferred successfully.
Ah, okay. So they're looking for the major. They're just insurance against the major gotchas, and
yeah. They're more interested in the structure.
Yeah, they're choosing their battles, and the big battles are
they're interested
not those fees.
In the structure of the transfer.
Right.
I think if you ask a lot of them, they won't have opinions about the fees, right? There's actually
interesting. I wouldn't have guessed that.
A fee sheet that, I'll be honest with you. A lot of them are pretty close partners with a lot of mortgage brokers.
I have to be to see them every day. Hey, Doug. Hey, Bob.
Yeah, and they.
Hey, Mary. Hey, Sue.
They kind of refer each other business.
Yeah. I saw that.
I don't want to suggest that.
No. I can verify. Verified. I saw that a lot when I was looking for. They know each other.
Yeah.
They're friends even.
Yeah.
Usually.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's only so many people in a particular area that are doing this stuff. So same thing, realtors too. Also, they're all buddies.
And the lawyer, like I said, they're more interested in structuring the transaction, not reviewing your fee schedule.
Right.
That's just it. It's a different expertise.
Okay, that was a great answer. Actually, that was really concise. All right, so this is cool. So if you're interested in it, check it out.
Yeah, check it
we'll
out.
put a link in the thing. So I have some more questions for you if you don't mind.
No, not at all.
I hope
Thanks
that was
for
a
giving
good.
me the opportunity to talk about that.
What?
Did you answer those two already?
Yeah. Well, that was on my list of questions. No,
You have your backup list?
what are you kidding me? He gave me an extra list this time. We're going to be here till 5 in the morning. You realize that? Thanks a lot, Bill. No, I'm just kidding.
I'll have to come back.
It's gotta be part 6 and part 7 too.
Yeah, part 6 and part 7. Yeah.
Are we done with the news?
We're done with the news. Yes, I think. Oh God, no. Here we go. So you brought up some interesting points about economics. We're probably going to go over your points and then we're going to be done. We're going to run out of time.
All right.
But I still think these are interesting. So you mentioned that attention's a limited resource.
Yeah.
Now I can come up with 1,000 things to justify that, and maybe not. But what do you mean by that?
Well,
like attention being a limited resource. Like you're saying that people have limited time. Are you saying time's a limited resource?
yeah, but time is a refinement on that idea, right?
Right. So time is one of the factors in this equation.
Everyone has 24 hours in a day.
Yeah.
But your ability to focus on certain activities and pay attention to certain things is only a fraction of that 24 hours, right? You're sleeping 7 or 8.
Right.
You're doing something else, another 7 or 8.
Right.
And it's just a limited resource. So when you look at the information explosion, as wonderful as it is, and it was reason for a lot of optimism at the dawn of the internet, and particularly the commercial internet and the broadening internet. What's really been a bottleneck is people's both willingness and ability to pay attention to various things.
Right.
And actually the abundance of things that are on the internet fragment our collective time even more.
Right.
Because we're all over the place.
Right.
So that's what I mean by time.
So it feels like if it was organized, if everyone wasn't doing the same thing over and over again, it would be better. Like the internet would be an advantage, but because I think a lot of people are doing the same thing over and over again, Also, so this ties into kind of something I was talking about the intentional additivity of the algorithmic approach to various websites. Like Facebook tries to make itself more addictive. They've admitted this.
Yeah.
And a lot of other websites do. A lot of games do this. They'll make the game, they'll make the mini games inside the games more addictive.
Yeah.
And everybody wants your attention because that means there might be a sales opportunity.
Yeah.
It might be a lead.
Yeah.
And it's just turned into this crazy world of it's like you're walking through an alley full of drug users trying to get you to take the first hit from their particular drug of choice.
Drug
pushers,
yeah,
right?
Yeah.
Well, drug users too, probably, yeah. But drug pushers trying to get you to take a hit of their thing first so that they can get you in there and you're stuck.
I think of it more as like a crazy casino, right?
Right,
Like,
okay.
Like everything's a bell and a whistle.
I made it shady. I made it dark.
You made it dark.
I made it Batman. I'm Batman. This is not my video game.
You walk into a casino and it's kind of like it's kind of exciting, right?
Right.
It's like, but you know, you've been in there for a few hours and now you want to get the hell out, right?
I'm fabulous. The buffet is great. You know, it's like I'm rich and famous. Everybody knows my name.
Right. They bring me
Yeah.
drinks.
They bring me drinks. They call me sir. Yeah. So even those little customer service behaviors in the casinos in Vegas
everything.
are trying to make you feel good. So it's kind of an addictive quality.
The carpet is designed to disorient you.
Oh
Did
yeah,
you know
yeah.
that?
No,
you
I didn't know
You ever
that.
wonder why the carpets are those crazy patterns?
Yeah.
It's intentional. It goes
right.
with the sweet air.
Oh my God. I gotta sit down. What's going on, man?
They disorient you with the carpet, but then they feed you highly oxygenated air to keep you awake.
And they have the stats on exactly how much they can get away with.
Yeah. It's all engineered.
It's amazing.
Yeah. So, I mean,
Yeah.
how do we get on that topic?
Well, because I was talking about how one of the reasons I
yeah.
think that it's becoming more of a limited resource, and part of this is because of we're not taking addiction in software seriously.
Yeah.
You know,
I worry about my kids.
Yeah, I worry about my kids too, and I worry about all of us because I
Yeah.
mean, even me. You know, I mean,
Yeah.
even if it was this afternoon. It was hard to go through the news and find
Yeah.
the stuff that was interesting to the dystopia report, and not get distracted by the other garbage that nobody,
Yeah.
that maybe doesn't fit.
Yeah.
I mean, it's so much stuff. It's just endless rabbit holes.
Yeah.
You know, and part of it is resisting the marshmallow. But part of it is, at some point, you're just saturated. I'm lucky that I have a lot of free time and I'm not that saturated, which is one of the reasons I can do this. But I mean, I can tell you this right now. If you have any ideas about starting a show like this, you're probably going to need to work less days a week, because this takes up way more time in the behind the scenes than it does. It's an iceberg, man.
Yeah.
It really is an iceberg.
Yeah.
So
sure.
and part of it is this addictive thing. So.
Never know what's beneath the table.
Yep. It just keeps going. It's table all the way down.
It's actually, the floor is about 30 feet down.
Yeah, that's where my lair is.
That's right.
So I don't know. Is there a solution? Do you have is there something? What effect does this have on civic society? I mean,
Yeah. All of this fragmented attention.
I mean, at some point, right? If did you see Ready Player One?
I started watching it. I haven't gotten through it.
So, but you probably saw enough of it.
I saw the
Ready
beginning.
Player One, everyone's living in containers,
Right.
And they're in VR,
and they're all in VR. Yeah.
right? I mean, and honestly, it doesn't matter if you're living in a container if 7 out of your 8 hours of free time is spent in VR.
Yeah.
Who cares?
Yeah,
You just
yeah.
get out of it long enough to feed your body and go back in it.
Yeah.
Right. So, I mean, maybe that's where things are headed. I mean, maybe Spielberg's right, which is terrifying, but
Spielberg. Oh, with that movie.
with that movie, right? Yeah. That was a Spielberg, right? I think it was.
It is Spielberg. You're right.
Yeah.
His sister was in that movie. One of their songs was in it.
Really?
Is that right?
All right, Twisted Sister, shout out.
Oh,
What?
yeah. Nice.
Nice.
Classic.
Thank you for the shout out, man. Awesome.
I don't know. I mean, I think when I start to get depressed thinking about it, I think about, we grew up on video games, right?
Mm-hmm.
How many hours did you spend playing video games as a kid? And you managed to get an education along the way. You managed to become a functioning adult.
Well, you know what?
I think that
Part of it is a cutoff, though, because it was a cartridge, They put what they could into this cartridge.
Yeah.
You went to Toys R Us and you bought this cartridge.
Right.
You went home and you plugged it in.
Yeah.
You got what you could out of the cartridge, and then you were done.
Yeah,
okay, I'm done.
Yeah.
And then with the internet, where does it end?
Dial up more, yeah.
Right? It's just a fire hose you're drinking from.
I think it will. Hopefully, it's more like a something that you tire of, as opposed to a drug you can't get off of.
Okay, I hope so too.
Hopefully, and I think you're already seeing pushback against the whole like culture, and I like, I like that Taylor Swift has this song, "Shrug It Off." Or, Is that right? Shrug It Off.
Yeah.
Shake It Off. Shake It Off. Right. And I think that's.
There's like a whole hoopla over Chappelle's show, Chappelle's latest comedy routine on Netflix. I won't spoil it, but apparently he's pretty hard on his viewers, actually, and his audience.
Yeah.
Like he thinks he had the social capital that he could just, say, you people are not being reasonable. You need to forgive each other more. Like, he didn't say that, but that's kind of like the message.
Okay.
And that's something I've said here a lot. I mean, we need to start forgiving each other more because.
Yeah. So what was the pushback? What was the blowback on that?
Well, people were mad at him because he was they're saying he's not funny. But, which he wasn't always. Sometimes it was just chastising people, being as clever as he could, but also like a critique of society. It had an edge.
Yeah.
It was edgy, right? So if you can shake it off, great. If you can't shake it off,
Well, I just think
I forgive him because that's the point.
It doesn't sound like he did anything that terrible, but I don't know the details, so I don't want to comment.
I don't know if he did anything wrong. but this is like people are crucified in public constantly.
My point with the Taylor Swift song, is that there's a cultural response, and I think that's I think so much.
Come on.
I think so much was. Speaking of Twisted Sister, and We're Not Going to Take It, right? Come on, how many of these anthems have kind of informed our lives, right?
Right.
And like gave us.
Heavy metal may be who I am, man.
It gives you that spirit, right?
Right.
So
heavy metal's about conquest. Most people don't realize this.
Conquest of self or the other?
Conquest of whatever. It's really about whether it's the self, the world around you, other people, you name it. It's about like a lot of people are like, oh, look at those dumb metalheads from when we were kids,
Yeah.
And like really, we're just like, man, we're plotting to take over the world. Because that's what it really is. But I don't know.
I think there'll be a cultural response, and it'll get tempered. And I think I hope that some of these games will just become redundant, right? And they get boring.
Mm-hmm. For sure, there's plenty of games that are boring and redundant.
They'll lose their interest.
The ones that are bad are really bad. That's for sure. It's the ones that are good that scare me.
Yeah, I played a lot of video games growing up, but I never got hooked on gaming. Like, I was never a gamer. Right?
So,
I always like programming the computer. Everyone else, I do like playing on the computer and using the computer.
The thing I constantly talk about Minecraft.
I hate being a computer user, by the way.
The thing I love about Minecraft is that it actually, and the reason I talk about it all the time is because it's different. Because it has this world where you're not just a consumer of a product, because there's something to be said for procedurally generated games. Where the world and maybe possibly even eventually the creatures and everything you're interacting with is procedurally generated, because you can't complete it. And it's obvious from the beginning you can't complete it.
Right.
So it's more about developing yourself and not developing your character in the game, right? And that's what Minecraft does. And there should be more games like that. I think it's a good sign that that's succeeding,
right?
And hopefully there'll be more of that.
Right.
It was never open source, but it was kind of quasi open source. He would share the code. Notch would share the code with anybody who asked. And Minecraft's kind of like, whether they're stuck or they're doing it on purpose, they're kind of going along with that, and there's still people modding out there and making changes to it, and in turn, Minecraft going around and looking at those mods and saying, okay, that works, and they're being very picky and picking out mods and adding them into the game. So it's like this. It's a community instead of being a casino.
And
it's more like a barn raising than a casino.
And I think you have what you've always had, right? People, to an extent, are going to self-select and self-organize what works for them. And,
marshmallow.
Right, there's going to be a lot of marshmallow eaters.
Marshmallow eaters.
It's true. And
that might be the tagline for this particular episode, marshmallow eaters.
No, what was
marshmallow eaters need not apply to the Technocrat Live.
No, it's got to be optimism not allowed.
Right. Optimism not. Doom. So, what do you think is causing You talked about the asymmetry of information production and consumption, and the asymmetry of markets and concentration of wealth power. Now, wealth power, that's been a trend since the 20s till now. Corporate incomes have gone up. Accumulation of wealth has gone up. It's you think one of the causes is mortgages and mortgage debt.
It's a component,
which is a compound equation working against you. So that makes sense.
Right.
So that's definitely part of it.
Along with the leverage. Yeah.
Right. So but like, what is with this asymmetry in civilization? I mean, what is happening? Why are we accepting asymmetry where people are allowed to use leverage against us? I mean, to a technocrat, to a person who gets the math, I'm like, what the fuck, man? Aren't you people mad?
Well,
get mad.
Yeah, I mean, I think all markets are asymmetrical. I think when you have a competition, and the goal is to ferret out the best product, or in the case of something like a hit single, right? People like what they like, and someone's going to get lucky and work really hard, and also get lucky and come up with a good riff or a good line. Right. So
some of that specialization, right?
Let's look at music as an example.
Right.
Music didn't have the asymmetry it has today, right? Where you have stars and then also rans, until you had the recording industry, right? It was the technology that brought leverage to music.
Those are evil, dangerous words. I'm waiting for the helicopters. Go on.
It's just another form of leverage. It's the technology that allowed. So before music could be distributed in a recorded format, it was just played live.
Right.
And played live, you have a lot more winners, because the local talent is what the local talent is.
Right.
And everyone gets to play to their local audience.
Right. And if the people in your town don't know the song, you don't hear it.
More or less. Yeah. Yeah. So once you have a broadcasting combined with recorded form, now you start, through luck and hard work, certain music catches on and becomes very popular, goes viral, so to speak.
Right.
And it gains leverage through the technology, through the distribution, through broadcast, through the distribution, through recorded mechanism. So now all of a sudden you're creating stars, right? You're creating music stars because the leverage of the technology allows them to leverage what they've created, right? So it's not just liked by the local audience now. Now it could be liked by a national audience,
right?
Who are all going to give you $1,
right?
So and now.
In theory.
The compounding effect of that is now those musicians have time to focus on their music, and chances are they were pretty good in the first place, and they're going to generate more music.
Right.
So they don't have time to do it.
And not every band does it, but sometimes you get bands that come out with 10 albums and everyone's better than the last one.
Right.
Yeah.
And then you have the one-hit wonders.
Yeah, you get the one-hit wonders, which are sad but predictable.
Well, they do well too, right?
Right. Well,
they go gold.
You roll the die enough times, eventually you get a hit, and then you're like, yeah, everyone loves me, and then you roll the die again, and they're like, ooh, no, we don't want that.
Well, as an artist, their artistic creativity and urge probably struggles, but financially they're probably doing okay.
Right. Yeah.
Because of the leverage. So that's what happens. There's
the leverage really is specialization. That was my point. Is that, and you have to specialize.
It's amplification.
Yeah. Well, yeah, you're right. So there's one is this: the amplification allows the specialization too, and the amplification comes from the economy of scale.
Right.
Yeah. So
like a surgeon too, someone with a special gift or talent.
Right.
Like a surgeon who's worked very hard to acquire this very unique set of skills to be able to operate on people.
Right.
And because there has to also be the demand, right?
Right.
So there's demand for surgery because they heal people. So that's leverage also, a very specialized talent or skill.
Right.
So these are all forms of leverage.
Right. So like Beethoven would write something, but then they'd have someone else would have to transcribe it to paper, and then the local musician in the town would actually have to be interested in it and hear about it, and then go buy the the paper, which of course would be a lot of money because that's the only way Beethoven could make any money.
Right.
And then he would buy it, and then he would learn to play the song if he could.
Right.
And then maybe the people in the town would hear it. So of course, if you're in a city, you're going to hear Beethoven.
Right.
But if you're out in the out in the sticks, you're going to hear people going to be still whistling Dixie because that's what they know.
Right.
Right.
And
yeah.
because of the limited distribution.
Right.
So that's how these asymmetries come about, I think. It's a combination of leverage, it's a combination of, in some markets winner takes all. It's complicated. It's not all one answer, but
Right.
But
For sure.
there's definite I think we have enough history now to see that markets tend towards asymmetry.
Right.
And as a matter of public policy, that's not something that can be allowed to persist, hence antitrust regulation and stuff like that.
So you mentioned that you're a licensed attorney, in New York and New Jersey.
Yes.
Have you passed the bar? Can you practice?
Yeah, that's what it means to be licensed.
Oh, that's literally what it is.
The bar,
Yeah, that's what license means.
That
Okay.
means you passed the bar.
I'm sorry, I'm being ignorant. But
No, that's fine.
so that's great. So you can go to a courtroom and defend me when I inevitably put my foot in my mouth in here.
I'm saying it's better to be ignorant so the fans can learn something.
Yeah, no. I specialize in that. That's actually the whole theme of the show.
Right. That's your role.
That's what this dystopia report is all about. How can we make Matt more learned?
Right.
How many crayons can we give Matt before he stops eating them and writes stuff down?
I'm gonna give you the marshmallow test. That's gonna be a whole show one night.
I'll eat the crayon instead. I passed the marshmallow test.
No, that's a whole other level, man. If you eat the crayon, you're doomed.
Doom.
It's all over.
Yep. So great. So that have you actually been in a courtroom and defended any cases or?
Yeah, a little bit. I didn't practice for long. I did some low grade criminal stuff for about a year.
Okay.
But
yeah. So I mean, it's really tough. There's a lot of competition in the legal market.
Yeah.
It's tough if you don't have a big name to get any business.
Yeah, a lot of the lawyers that are successful, they're they're with big firms.
Right.
They've put in a lot of hours. I don't know. I never, I looked at the law firm path, coming out of law school, and I don't know. I can't say I had a full picture of what was going on, but it seemed like associates had it rough, and then maybe you get picked for partner. It's like this again. It's like this weird lottery.
Right. There's definitely a luck aspect to it.
I think I don't know. I don't want to say that and then insult someone who worked very hard.
Well, also there's another. I'll give you an out. I'll give you an out. Which is that the tech industry is awesome. There's so many different aspects. It's growing so fast. Nobody can even keep track of what's happening.
Yeah.
Things are constantly changing. So if you have legal talents and tech talents, if you're looking for one field to cross over the other one into, it just seems like a natural fit to go to tech. It's so much easier to just operate in this space where the demand is through the roof for everything.
Yeah. And actually, the stuff I'm doing now touches on a lot of compliance.
Mm-hmm.
So there may be opportunities there where things cross over.
Nice.
In fact, for a couple of years, I did e-discovery, which I really thought was going to set me on a trajectory where, long term, where I was working, in both fields.
Mm-hmm.
It turns out it didn't. Working in e-discovery.
So you were automating lawyers away.
Well, no.
Okay.
No.
Well, because that's a big news item, right? That's like the buzz thing right now.
I just saw something recently I'll tell you about.
Okay.
But no, what I was doing was just making the discovery of electronic materials easier,
right,
and possible, frankly.
Okay.
Right? Because
I mean,
we were operating it was a company over in Lynbrook.
Just because you can turn the computer on doesn't mean you can code an OCR to look for keywords in a particular document.
It was far more than OCR. Yeah, I mean, it was there was enterprise search engines being leveraged. I don't know if you ever heard of Autonomy.
No.
Major search engine. And they were applying all kinds of heuristics to make the discovery process more reliable. And they actually were able to satisfy, I forget what the actual standards were, but it was court scrutiny. So they were able to satisfy legal scrutiny to allow their algorithms to be used as legitimate discovery.
Oh, wow. Okay, great.
So amplifying the effect of the lawyers reviewing documents.
Right. So now you have to. It's almost like now
Well,
you're
everyone knew they had to, right? Because you have a trove of 1 trillion documents.
right. Because if you don't do this and the other guy does, and then he finds out first,
Well,
you lose.
you gotta winnow it down. I mean, you can't read everything.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
So I forgot where we were. But
No, that's fine. That's fine. Yeah, because we
so
were
it's
talking.
like-
I asked you about the bar,
Yeah.
and you were telling me about. So like, you were running your own legal business at one point, and now you have your own tech business. Like, what is it like running your own small business? Are there any gotchas you want to share with people, or?
Well, I never ran a legal business.
Right. No. I mean, if you were a lawyer, you have to. Were you working for someone else?
Yeah, I
or?
was working with a discovery company in London.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry.
I was actually
I just assumed that you
the
had.
technical operations manager for the discovery process.
And I know you were a consultant in tech for a while.
Yeah, I've done consulting over the years. I've done independent software development.
Right.
And I took a stab at doing the cloud stuff as a cloud consultant independently. But in those kinds of businesses, the sales cycle is very long to get any sizable piece of business. So you really have to have a long runway and a lot of patience until you start getting the clients lined up, and
Right.
then you're constantly looking for clients.
You're either parched or drowning.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then doing the work while trying to line up your next gig, I just decided, you know what, if I'm going to do consulting, it's better to go with an organization that has a sales team, and I'll do the consulting work and let them figure out how to make it rain.
Right. Nice.
Yeah. So that's what worked best for me.
Well, specialize. Again, it's that specialization. You're leveraging your skills as a tech.
Yeah. And I was never going to, I'm amazed at people that are able to successfully grow consulting businesses, and I think the key to it is you need to start out with a couple of large clients that are going to keep you fed for a couple of years.
Right, until you build up a reputation.
And then you can start building the reputation of your firm, and you get your sales process down, and you can get a couple of long sales processes underway, and then you basically build on that basic foundation. And once you can start adding people, now you're really cooking with gas, right? Because now you're starting to scale.
Right.
And then I could see how it works, but I don't know how you do that without either some key clients early on or early investment.
Right. Interesting. Oh, that's a good warning. I mean, for
a consulting type business,
I mean, for me. I've always worked for companies because it just made more sense. It just the upfront. There was too high a hurdle to jump over, and the upfront financial offer between the money offered as a salary and the health insurance was just massive compared to what I would make the first year on my own.
Yeah.
So it's a huge risk, stepping out there.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, in my view, if you're going to go into business, there has to be a substantial upside. Because you are gonna have to start somewhere,
right?
And people have different motivations for going into business or starting organizations, whether it be social entrepreneurs or other entrepreneurs. So there are other motivations, and great if you can put the money aside for some time, but typically, what's motivating people is that with a business you have potentially very great upside, whereas with a job, you kind of know what the income structure is going to be, and there are people that rise through the ranks inside of a corporate structure as well, and can do very well too.
Do you know we're almost done?
Yeah.
Yeah, I got this.
I know we're getting kicked out.
We're getting kicked out of here. And you thought you were going to try to end early. And
listen, I didn't know how it was going to go.
Right?
I really didn't. But it's gone quickly. And,
we really cranked through it.
We didn't even touch this list.
Yeah, we didn't even touch my list. We didn't touch your list. Your answers to my list. And we only got through like 2/3 of your list.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, you've been a phenomenal guest, really interesting, and I appreciate you sharing.
It's been fun having this talk. It's very interesting topics.
Right.
Obviously, we could go on a long time about
We could go on we could go on until we look really sad. We're just yeah, man. What about this? Yeah, that sounds good. And that would be super interesting. People would be like, "Are those people dead?"
Right. They're looking kind of pale.
They're kind of looking at, don't they have to go to the bathroom? Maybe they're robots. Oh no, it's real.
That's why you need the water.
Right. You need the what? Right.
You need something with waves.
Right. Yeah, definitely need something. We need something with water and waves in the back. I think he was out of the room when that happened.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, just to verify the video is real.
Right.
Bill Catlan, thank you so much for being on my show.
Right, Matt, thanks for having me.
Yeah.
It was a lot of fun.
It was.
Best of luck with your continued success with the show.
Thanks. I'm hoping this will be really. I really just. I want people. If you hung on this long, hit subscribe. If you made it through this whole show.
Right.
Go into my channel and go hit subscribe on
Right.
YouTube and subscribe to Area 22 so you get the latest on the live shows. Thanks so much for joining us. I'll see you next week. Matthew Newhall, Technocrat Live. Good night, folks.
All right.